Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN WhatIf 2.0, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Had an Emotional Plant Quirk? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Izuku was getting more and more excited the closer it got to his 4th birthday. He couldn't wait to get his quirk. He was going to be a big strong hero just like All Might. It was 3 days until his birthday and he was almost vibrating with excitement and anticipation. He was sitting at the dinner table eating his favorite meal katsudon. "I bet I'm going to get a really cool quirk just like yours, Mom," Izuku chirps. Or even one like Dad, he could breathe fire, right? Or it could be a mix of both and I could have a prekenic fire ability. Where I can like move or control fire. Like Endeavor but cooler or something more like dash dot. Izuku breath. Mom cuts him off. Izuku takes a deep exaggerated breath making Mom laugh. "Maybe I could even get a cool quirk like Kaken. That would be even better because Kaken is so cool, almost cooler than All Might," Izuku continues. Mom laughs. "Even cooler than All Might?" Izuku frantically nods his head. "Remember to eat," Mom reminds Izuku. Izuku grabs his chopsticks and starts to shove his food into his mouth. Mom just shakes her head and continues to eat her meal at a slower pace. Izuku, after inhaling his food, quickly grabbed his bowl and put it in the sink. "Can you play the All Might video for me, Mom? Please," he begs his mom. She smiles down at him and shakes her head amused. "Sure, sweetheart, just give me a second," she says softly. Izuku races into his room and sits at the desk waiting for Mom to put the video on. "Did you brush your teeth, Zu?" Mom calls from the kitchen. Izuku then stands and rushes into the bathroom and quickly brushes his teeth. He sets his toothbrush down and sneezes. He looks down at the sink and sees daisy petals. "That's odd," he mumbles to himself. "When did we get daisies?" He looks around for the daisies but doesn't find any. He shakes his head and more petals fall. He blinks a couple of times then looks up at the mirror. He almost screams, almost. There are a bunch of daisies sitting in his hair. They weren't there before he came into the bathroom and his mom didn't put them in there. Is this his quirk? He reached up and grabbed one of the daisies and pulled. It pulled off like pulling out a hair strand, just not painful. He blinked a couple times looking at the daisy. It came from his head. He felt the pull. This quirk? His mom came into the bathroom probably wondering what was going on. She gasps and rushes over to him, pulling him into a hug, tears trailing down her face. He realizes tears are falling down his face as well and his mouth is pulled into a giant grin. "You got your quirk?" Mom exclaims. Izuku nods his head. Mom pushes him back and looks over his hair and looks at the daisy in his hand. "I wonder what it is?" Mom asks quietly. "Not sure," Izuku tells her. "That's fine, we can figure it out. I'll get you an appointment with a quirk counselor for this weekend, okay?" she asks. Izuku only nods his head looking at the flower in his hand. It was really pretty. Like really pretty. He watched as the daisy wilted and slowly disappeared into a fine dust in his hand. Why did that happen? How long did they last? Did they last longer if he kept them on his head? He starts muttering and going to his room to find something to write his notes down in. "Kaken! Kaken! Look!" Izuku exclaims, running over to him holding a pink rose in his hands during recess. "Huh," Kaken says looking over at him. "What? You got a flower? What's so special about it?" Kaken snaps, glaring at the flower. Kaken already got his quirk and it was so cool he could blow stuff up with his sweat. "It's my quirk," Izuku chirps. Kaken scowls and rips the rose from his hands and examines it. Izuku fidgets nervously. It was his first time making a flower in his hands instead of his hair and he was really proud of it. Kaken scoffs and blows the flower up. Izuku freezes watching the burnt petals fall to the ground. Izuku blinks dumbly at the hand Kaken used to blow the flower up. Kaken scoffs again. "That's such a dumb quirk. You're never going to get anywhere with that quirk." Kaken jeers then shoves Izuku onto the ground. Izuku, coming out of his shock, managing to catch himself but not without scraping his hands. Tears well in his eyes as the other kids around them start laughing at him. Izuku sniffs and wipes his nose on his arm. That was mean, Kaken, Izuku mumbles. Kaken barks out a laugh. He gets up in Kaken's face and growls, "You would be better quirkless than have that dumb quirk." Izuku just blinks at him for a minute. He goes to stand up but Kaken just pushes him down again. The other kids just watched and laughed. The tears in his eyes finally spilled over. "I think you need a different name. How about Deku?" Kaken announces. "Like a dumb loser like. Right, Deku?" Kaken asks, causing more tears to spill down his face. Izuku sniffs, then manages to get up without being pushed and runs towards a tree far away and sits behind it. He tucks his knees and curls into himself. He quietly sobs into his knees, just waiting for the bell to ring to be able to go back inside. He takes deep breaths and manages to stop his sobs but not the tears. He frantically wipes at his face, trying to clear the tears. "So, Izuku, have you made any progress with your quirk?" Mom asks at dinner 2 weeks from the Kaken incident. Izuku just shrugs his shoulders and pushes his food around. "You doing okay, sweetie?" Mom prods, voice laced with concern. "Yeah," Izuku sighs. "You sure?" Mom asks. Izuku nods his head. She sighs and starts to eat again. Kaken and his friends had gotten worse, and it didn't help that he couldn't really control his quirk. If he gets flustered in class, peonies show up in his hair, or if he gets anxious, red columbine will bloom from his head. Everyone always laughs at him when that happens, either causing the flower to wilt or to bloom larger. He sighs and takes a bite of his dinner. He felt a little sick after Kaken had punched him today. Thankfully it was his shoulder and not anywhere that the bruise would actually show up. He managed to swallow down his bite and then pushes his food away. Mom looks at him concerned. "Can I be excused?" Izuku asks. "Sure, Zu," Mom tells him quietly. Izuku stands and walks into his room. He face plants onto his bed and the tears he was holding back flow down his face. It was so dumb. Kaken was dumb. Maybe it would have been better if he didn't have a quirk at all. The quirk doctor said that the flowers most likely tie to my mood, which didn't make sense because flowers didn't have moods. He was going to look into it, but with all of Kaken and his lackey's words made him not want to. No. He was not going to let them get to him. He was going to become a hero and no one was going to stop him. He just had to work a little harder than everyone else. First he would start studying his quirk. Then he would start working out, maybe not a lot right now, but at least going on walks and stuff. Violets bloom in his hair. Izuku smiles, then grabs out his notebook to start planning. "I don't know why you think we are still friends." "It's kind of sad that you do, Deku," Kaken spits. "Even if I did want to be friends with a pathetic waste of space like you, which I don't, you wouldn't even be worth my time," Kaken says matter-of-factly. Izuku glares at him, then gets an idea. He grows a single white rose and hands it to Kaken with a smile on his face. Kaken snatches it from his hand and glares at it. "What's this supposed to mean?" Kaken snaps. Izuku just smiles and starts walking home. Not like he was going to follow him. Okay, maybe Kaken might follow him, but he was pretty sure he wouldn't. He really hoped he wouldn't. Izuku manages to make it home unscathed. He steps in through the door and takes his shoes off. He walks into his room and sets his backpack on the ground. He walks over to his desk and pulls out his notebook on his quirk. He then went over to his laptop to start researching more flower meanings. He started to list them in his book. Izuku was happy minding his own business, just waiting for class to end when the teacher had to bring up high school. The teacher also just had to mention that he was going to UA. In front of everyone. Including Kaken. The whole class starts laughing at him for even thinking of going to UA. This is why he hates middle schoolers. I mean, he is a middle schooler, but at least adults don't laugh in his face. Maybe after talking to him, but not in front of him. The teacher quiets the class down and finishes talking, and then the bell rings. Izuku scrambles to get his stuff in his bag before Kaken or any of his lackeys can take his stuff. Kaken still manages to grab one of his hero analysis books. Great. Just great. This day just couldn't get worse. What's this? One of your stalker notebooks? Kaken asks. I'm not a stalker, Izuku mumbles half-heartedly. Kaken just rolls his eyes. You really think that you can be a hero with that shitty quirk of yours? Do you not have a brain? Kaken snaps. Izuku just sighs. Can you give me my book back? Kaken and his lackeys laugh at him, then Kaken sets off his quirk, scorching the book, and throws it out the window. Izuku looks sadly out the window. That took him a long time to do. Hopefully it was still salvageable. Kaken then shoves him into a wall. Izuku almost trips over his own feet but manages to stay standing. He could get away from this. He's been training in different fight styles since he was 6, but he learned the hard way that made things worse. If you really want to become a hero, why don't you hope for a better quirk in your next life and take a swan dive off the roof? Kaken laughs. Izuku glares at him. Maybe Kaken should take his own advice. Wait, no. Do not fall to his level, Izuku. Kaken gives him one final push and leaves with his lackeys. Izuku takes a couple deep breaths, then walks out of the school to go look for his notebook. He finds it in the koi pond and takes it out and shakes it a little. The writing was a little smudged, but it should be okay. He gently sets it in his bag. Kaken just had to be that way, didn't he? Was such an a-hole. A dickbag. Gee, insulting him in his head is just as bad as insulting him to his face, but he kind of deserves to be called names. Okay, well, Noon deserved to be called names, but, ugh, it was just so frustrating. Izuku is suddenly pulled out of his thoughts from what sound like sludge. He turns and just barely dodges a villain made of slime, sludge. Okay, wait, stop thinking and dodge, and the slime is now covering him. This is what he gets for thinking too much. He shuts his mouth tightly and tries to keep the sludge from getting into his lungs, but he has to breath eventually. His body's need to breath overcomes his logic, and he opens his mouth to breath only to get a mouth full of sludge. Stop struggling. It'll be over quicker, the villain tells him. That only makes Izuku struggle more. As the world starts to go black and fuzzy, he hates a loud voice. He slams into the wall and everything goes black. He comes to someone tapping on his cheek. He opens his eyes and blinks away the blur in his vision and see All Might in front of him. He jolts up, then groans as pain throbs in his head. He puts a hand to his head, then suddenly focuses as he realizes All Might is saying something. "Oh, to go now," All Might says. "Wait!" Izuku exclaims, quickly grabbing his bag and throwing it over his shoulder. All Might must not have heard him as he gets ready to go. Now, Izuku can admit what he does next is stupid. He clings onto All Mig's leg. Halfway through the sky, All Might looks at him and tells him to let go. Oh wow, he should definitely let go. It's not like he will plummet to his death if he lets go. No, not at all. Oh, you are right, All Might says suddenly, causing Izuku's heart to drop. He hadn't realized he was saying those things out loud. Well, sheet. They land on a rough and Izuku stumbles away. Sorry about, clinging to your leg, and for what I said, I didn't realize I said those things out loud, Izuku tells him sheepishly. It is quite all right, young man. Now I really must be going, All Might says. Wait, I just need to ask you a question. Could I still become a hero even with a non-combative quirk? Izuku finally asks the question he has been dying to ask. He hears a steaming sound and looks up to see All Might in a cloud of smoke. What? He mumbles. All Might sighs, then goes on to explain why he looks the way he does. Izuku just stands there dumbfounded. So to answer your question, no, I don't think you can be a hero with a non-combative quirk, All Might tells him and leaves him on the roof. Izuku stands there for who knows how long, staring at where the hero was. His idol, the person he looked up to for so long, just told him he couldn't be a hero. It didn't matter if he pushed himself to the limits. Knew how to fight, even against people with quirks, thanks to his analysis. He just didn't cut it out to be a hero. No. He was not going to give up, he was going to keep going, keep trying, even if it was the last thing he did. This society could rip his dream of becoming a hero from his cold, dead hands. Okay, maybe that was a little dramatic, but he was not giving up. He had to do this and All Might. All Might might be the #1 hero, but he was also the #1 douchebag. Okay, maybe he wasn't that. He would have to fight Kaken for that title, and he never loses, even at being the worst. Izuku snorts at that thought. He was going to get into UA, and he was going to get into the hero course. He might have to work harder than everyone and go the long way, but no matter what, he was going to do it. This was his dream, and he was going to chase it until his wings melted in the heat of the sun like Icarus. Unlike Icarus, though, he was going to pick his butt back up and make a brand new pair of wings and soar. He's already been burned before. What's a couple more times? Izuku looks back at the spot on the roof and turns his back on it and takes the stairs and walks towards his future. On his walk home there wasn't any villain activity, which seemed a little odd. Well, maybe with All Might in the area the villains were too scared to come out. Izuku makes it home and slides his shoes off. "I'm home, Mom," he calls. "Welcome home, Izuku. What took you so long and why are you covered in stains?" Mom asks. "Well, a villain attacked me but I'm totally fine," he says quickly. "I also met All Might," Izuku adds on bitterly. "Oh, I'm so happy for you?" Mom asks, confused as to why Izuku seemed so upset about meeting his idol. "Turns out All Might SCKs. Never meet your heroes, right?" Izuku sighs. He walks into his room and drops his bag off. He grabs his comfort sweatshirt, a pair of pajama briefs, and a change of boxers. He grabs his towel on the way out of his room and walks into the bathroom. He turns on the bath and gets into the shower. He scrubs his skin raw to get rid of the feeling of slime on his skin. He barely realizes that the bath is almost full. He turns it off, then decides he should probably stop scrubbing his skin. He quickly washes his hair and rinses off. He slides into the bath and lets everything that happened to him disappear. After relaxing a little bit, he realizes he feels exhausted. Today was very eventful. Maybe he could take school off tomorrow. Yeah, that sounded really nice. Then he could also redecorate his room. Maybe go get another plant. He would certainly have more space for plants after what he planned to do. He takes a deep breath and sinks a little deeper into the bath. He lets all the tension in his muscles go away. That was tomorrow. He was here right now. He didn't have to think about the future for a little bit. Just for tonight. Just stay in the present. Don't think a million years ahead. The future really was unpredictable. It seemed even people with quirks that could predict the future really couldn't. It was too complicated. Too many paths. Him just bumping into someone on the sidewalk could change everything. That could be the breaking point for that person, or they could pickpocket him, they could even stab him. Quirks that predicted the future often just picked one of the many possibilities, not the thousands that there were. Even if it could, there wouldn't be time to study all of them. Stop, think Izuku, just relax. Maybe he could drink some lavender tea. He thinks they have some dried lavender still left from the garden. Or he could even pick it fresh. Yeah, that sounded nice. The water gets cold, so Izuku steps out and dries off with his towel and gets dressed. His comfort sweatshirt definitely helped make him feel better. Feel more grounded into the moment. He steps out and gets hit with the smell of katsudan. His stomach growls and Izuku decides that it was probably a good idea to eat dinner. He walks into the kitchen and sees Mom setting the table. "Do you need any help?" he asks tentatively, pulling his sleeves over his hands. "No, it's all right, Zu. Just sit down, the katsudan is ready," Mom says. He nods and takes his seat. Dinner goes pretty uneventfully. Mom talks about her day and doesn't ask about Izuku's. She understands he needs a little bit of time to relax and rest emotionally. "Can I not go to school tomorrow? Just take a break day?" Izuku asks as he cleans up his place. "Sure. How about we go plant shopping or something?" Mom asks hopefully. "Yeah," Izuku agrees. "Also, I was thinking, and you don't have to agree, but going to the cat cafe really helps me, and I was wondering if we could, maybe, potentially, get a cat," Izuku mumbles. Mom blinks a couple times and thinks it over. "If you think it would really help, but you would be responsible for it," Mom tells him hesitantly. Izuku looks over at her with stars in his eyes. "Really?" he whispers. Mom smiles at him and nods. Izuku beams and finishes washing his dishes. He goes into his room and quickly does research on what you would need for a cat. After finishing, he stands up and stretches, his shoulders popping. He sighs contentedly and walks over to his bed and flops face first into it. He closes his eyes and falls asleep in seconds. He wakes up the next morning and sighs. He had a lot of work to get to. First the room, though. He looks around and frowns. Everything was All Might. Why had he thought this was a good idea? Why did his mom let him do this? He sighs again. He felt like that is going to be a recurring thing today. He walks out of his room and asks his mom where the boxes are. She tells him where, and he grabs 3, hoping that that was enough. He starts with the posters first and takes them all down, leaving his walls bare. It was a little odd seeing it like that after it being covered in posters since he was 3. He then set to work cleaning up all of the action figures. He kept up some hero stuff, none of All Might. He still loved heroes and All Might was great, but he also tried to destroy his hope so he can SCK it. Izuku sighs. He really needed to stop being around Kaken so much. When his room was devoid of All Might stuff, it looked bare. Especially without him having a comforter anymore. It seemed better though. More Izuku and less All Might. He pushes the boxes out of his room, then gets dressed. Izuku, how about we go to your favorite cafe for breakfast, then go shopping for plants and whatever else you need? Mom asked, and Izuku nodded his head. After getting coffee and some food, they head to the mall. They get him a new dark gray comforter. He gets some picture frames as well. He will have to figure out what to put in them later. He also gets a cork board for God knows what and some fairy lights. He gets a small succulent as well. They also go to a pet store and get the necessities for their soon-to-be kitty companion. Izuku was honestly so excited. He loved going to go to the cat cafe, especially after a rough day of dealing with bullies. They head back to the apartment to drop off their stuff before heading to the shelter. Izuku didn't want to buy some purebred cat but one that came from a shelter and needed to be adopted. They make it to the shelter and his mom explains to the lady at the front why they're there. The lady leads them to where the cats are. Izuku's face immediately lights up. They had all the cats in a room. A soft smile finds its way onto Mom's face. Seeing her son so happy. It seemed so long since he was so genuinely happy. Izuku goes and sits down in the middle of the room and most of the cats come flocking over to see the new person. His mom walks over and sits next to him. See any you particularly like? Mom asks. Not yet. Well, it doesn't really matter to me which one we get, he tells her. One of the cats flops into his lap. I can sense a butt, his mom tells him quietly. But I really like the one that's in my lap right now, he says, petting said cat. His mom smiles and nods her head. She gets up and talks to the lady waiting at the door. They go to the front and leave Izuku with the cats. The cat in his lap looks up at him and, Izuku smiles and scratches behind their ear. Immediately purrs hit his ears and he smiles even wider. Mom comes back with a carrier and they get the cat into the carrier. They leave and head home. Izuku was so excited to have a cat. He did understand though that it would take a little bit for the cat to get used to their house. They make it inside and set the cat down. Izuku opens the carrier doors to let the cat out. Do you have a name yet? Mom asks him. Yeah, I was thinking Buttons, Izuku says. I like that, Mom says. Izuku walks into his room and gets to work redecorating his room. He also moves his plants onto the empty shelves and shifted the little garden by his window into the bigger space. He sets his new succulent onto his desk. He startles when something rubs against his leg. He looks down and sees Buttons staring up at him. He sighs and picks him up. Hey Buttons, he murmurs softly into his fur. He pets Buttons in his arm then gently sets Buttons back down to continue wandering. Izuku should get some catnip or something for his garden. That would be something nice to do. Izuku walks out of his room and sees that Mom set the stuff up for the cat. A smile graces his face and he walks into the kitchen and puts on a kettle to make some tea. What kind are you making? Mom asks. Lavender, Izuku tells her. Make me a cup? She asks. Izuku nods his head. He opens the cupboard and pulls out 2 of the homemade bags of lavender tea. He also grabs 2 cups. He waits for the water to boil then pours it into the cups. He drops the tea bags in and stirs both of them. He hands a cup to his mom then walks into his room and sits on his bed. He grabs the manga he was reading earlier and starts to read again. Buttons comes back in and jumps up onto the bed and flops next to him. He was going to be okay. Tomorrow was probably going to be rough though. Kaken and his group would probably do more to make up for the lost time. Izuku finishes his tea and decides to go for a walk. He tells his mom then heads out. He puts his earbuds in and heads down his street. He takes a deep breath and lets it out. He walks down past the beach. It's been turned into a dumping site and didn't look very pretty. He could clean it up. He could add that to his training regime. It would also be something nice to do for the community. His mom would have to rent a truck or something to take the trash away though. He'll ask her later. He should probably also start studying for the UA entrance exam. Maybe even look and see what the physical exam will be. It'll probably be something that is totally skewed to people with big flashy quirks. Just like everything else in society. Izuku sighs and turns around to head back home. Robots. It was FING robots. What was he supposed to do against robots? This was a bunch of bullshit. At least he still had a chance at transferring into the hero course if he did good at the sports festival. Why did the universe have to hate him so much? He just wanted to live his life and do what he wanted with it. Izuku flops backwards down onto his bed. Well, there goes the physical exam. Robots are just so dumb. It was totally irrational too. Like there were so many people with great potential but they required other people or were more for rescues. Rescue heroes were a thing. Why did UA have to be so irrational? Hey mom, Izuku calls. Yeah Zu, mom calls back. I'm going for another walk. I just need to clear my head, Izuku tells her. Alright, don't be out too late, mom tells him. Izuku gets out of bed and leaves the apartment. He heads to where All Might had first crushed his dreams. Like stepping on a dandelion. Izuku was just a weed to everyone else. Something appealing and unique, but society tells you are terrible and ugly. Everyone was just like a bunch of flowers, all appealing and unique in their own ways, even the weeds. Ugh, he needs to stop getting so philosophical. Izuku sighs and climbs the stairs to the roof of the building. He gets to the roof and walks over to the edge and looks out across the city. It was a pretty view to see all the lights of the city at night. Izuku makes a flower in his palm. It ends up being a yellow chrysanthemum, slighted love. Izuku scoffs. A tear slides down his face, the first since the incident. Izuku takes out a lighter as more tears join the first. He lights the flower on fire and drops it on the ground where All Might had stood. Him and his stupid words. Spite is always a good motivator. Izuku scoffs again. He turns and walks back down the stairs of the building, wiping tears off his face. Unknown to him, a certain hero was watching him to make sure he wouldn't jump. Izuku stands looking at the beach covered in trash. This was going to be rough. Yes, he had quite a bit of muscle. Yes, he was also trained in different fighting techniques. He is not trained in the proper way to clean up a beach. He would ask for help from some friends like mom suggested, but the only friend, no, Kaken is not his friend, not anymore. Izuku sighs and puts some gloves on. He starts to work taking smaller pieces of trash at first and trying to figure out how the piles are standing up so as to not upset it. He didn't want to die from being smashed by an old fridge. That would just be something else for Kaken to make fun of him for. He had also made out a plan for how he would get rid of all the trash. He planned on getting rid of all of it by the UA entrance exam. It was nice though because even if he didn't finish cleaning the beach by the exam, he could still just keep cleaning. Izuku drinks the rest of his coffee and continues his work. The beach was actually looking better with only 2 months of work. He's also put on more muscle. To be able to keep working, he's steered clear of Kaken and his lackeys. He didn't need to try and work out with bruises, cuts, and burns. That would just be counterproductive. Izuku goes and grabs a fridge trying to pull it to the truck. Need some help? A tired voice asks, startling him. Alright, new thing to work on, spatial awareness. He needed to be able to tell if people are around him. Wait, he needed to answer the guy. He looks over at the guy and he has a black jumpsuit on with a large gray scarf. He seemed familiar but he wasn't sure how. Sure, Izuku says cautiously. The guy walks over to the other side of the fridge and helps him pull it onto the truck. Izuku stretches his shoulders out after that. His shoulders and back pop. I've been watching you, the man suddenly says, almost causing Izuku to fall over. Not creepy at all, Izuku tells the man. The man snorts. Anyway, I was just wondering why you were cleaning up the beach, he asks him. Izuku shrugs and goes to grab something else from the piles of trash. Something to do. Good way to build up muscle and exercise. It also gives back to the community, Izuku tells him. He walks over to a washing machine and starts to lift to drag it, but the man goes to the other side of it and helps him lift. Are you just working out to work out or do you have a more specific reason? The man questions. What is this, an interrogation? You want to know my whole life story now? I don't even know your name, Izuku responds. Aizawa, and I'm just curious. I've not been following you, I would just stop by every now and then and saw you cleaning the beach, Aizawa says. Right? Izuku says dryly. They slide the washing machine onto the truck. The beach was about 2/10 cleaned up, which was his goal. If he cleaned 1/10 of the beach a month, he would get it done by the entrance exam without overexerting himself. I'm working out because I want to become a hero, Izuku replies to the man's earlier question. Oh really? Why do you want to become a hero? Aizawa asks. Despite his curiosity, he speaks in the same dry, tired tone. Spite, Izuku answers blandly. Aizawa blinks at him as he walks over and starts to grab more of the trash. Anything other than spite for your reasoning? The man asks cautiously. Well, yes, I've always wanted to save and help people, but spite is slowly becoming my main motivator, Izuku tells him. The man hums as an answer and helps him take more of the bigger things in the trash heap of a beach. Month 5 and the beach was about halfway cleaned. Aizawa would come around every now and then and help him with cleaning the beach. He would also give him some fighting tips if Izuku ever asks. Izuku had figured out why Aizawa seemed so familiar. He was the underground hero Eraserhead. Izuku was nice enough not to mention it because it would probably be bad for his image if some kid could figure out who you are. Izuku also wanted to become an underground hero, so getting tips from the pro was a big help. He had also helped him with his spatial awareness so he could tell when someone was sneaking up on him. He still couldn't tell when Aizawa was though. He would need to learn how to sneak up on someone like that. Maybe Aizawa could teach him. He still wasn't planning on doing the hero exam but general studies. Even though it would be a bit harder to transfer, he could do it. He became exceptionally good at dodging courtesy of Kaken. Izuku trudges to the beach trying to ignore the ache in his shin from being kicked. He was also pretty sure he had a bruised rib. Probably not broken though. He twists his swollen wrist until he hears it pop back into place. A hiss slides out of his gritted teeth. He was doing so well, and then Kaken and his lackeys cornered him, and now he was injured. The only reason he was still going to the beach was because he knew Aizawa would be there today. He also needed help popping his broken nose back into place. He could do it himself, but that didn't mean he wanted to. Aizawa was leaning against the truck waiting for him. Izuku walks up to him and Aizawa gapes at the bruise already forming around his eye and on his nose. What happened to you? Aizawa asks him. Izuku just shrugs. Aizawa gives him a look and he shifts on his feet. Could you help me reset my nose for me? I can do it myself, but you know it's always nice to have help, especially with broken noses, you know, and I just dash. Aizawa cuts him off. Sure, kid. Izuku lets out the breath he was holding. He walks over and hops up onto the truck. Aizawa stands in front of him and puts his hands on either side of his nose and pushes it back into place with a loud crack. Izuku grits his teeth until the pain subsides. Izuku pulls a tissue out of his pocket and puts it against his nose to stop the blood. Aizawa is still giving him a look that Izuku is pointedly ignoring. Aizawa sighs, then asks, "Are you actually planning on cleaning up any of the beach today?" "No, I only came down here because I knew you would be here today," Izuku explains. Aizawa sighs again. "You could have just not shown up and I probably would have guessed you were sick or something," Aizawa says. Izuku scrunches his face up, then winces. "I would have felt bad making you wait for something that wasn't going to happen," Izuku tells him. "Problem child," Aizawa sighs. "Hobo man," Izuku retorts to that. Aizawa gives him another look, but Izuku doesn't back down. Aizawa rolls his eyes. "How about I take you to a cafe or something instead and we have a chat?" Aizawa asks. "This is a trap but free coffee and food. Fall for the trap and tell him what happened and get free food, or not fall for the trap and not tell him what happened but not get any free food." Izuku sighs. There is only one choice. "Sure," Izuku says, slumping slightly. Aizawa gives him this creepy smile. Izuku slumps further into himself. This was a mistake. Izuku hops down onto the ground and follows Aizawa as he leaves. They meet up with Aizawa's husband Yamada at the cafe, who gives him a giant smile and a thumbs up. Izuku just glares and retracts into himself. Why did he agree to this again? It was a shitty day and now he was going to get interrogated by 2 adults. Wonderful. Yamada takes him to a booth while Aizawa orders them some coffee. Izuku sighs and looks out the window. He has caused his own death. This is how he dies. Before he even has his first kiss. I mean, he's had some crushes before. Like Kakin and All Might. Ugh, it's so embarrassing that his childhood crush was technically All Might. Why did he hate himself so? I mean, I guess Midnight was also on that list. Why was he such a disaster bisexual? Aizawa slides into the booth across from him while Yamada was sitting next to him. Yep, definitely trapped. Truly he should have thought this through, but the free food will be worth it. So, do you want to explain what happened? Aizawa asks him. Not really, but I am getting the sense that I have to, Izuku says, then takes a sip of his coffee. Izuku sighs deeply and shifts slightly when he upsets his ribs. Well, the short and simple answer is that I was cornered by 4 people and beat up. Long answer is, I don't want to explain, Izuku explains. Do you not know how to fight? Aizawa asks him, brows furrowing. Oh no, I know how to fight. I'm trained in about 10 different styles and normally fight in a blend of them. It's just if I fight back it just makes it worse the next day, Izuku replies. Wait, this happened at school? Yamada asks, eyebrows shooting up into his hairline. Yeah, Izuku says, confused. How often does this happen? Aizawa asks, waving his hand at all of Izuku. It used to every day until I figured out how to avoid the people bullying me, Izuku tells him. The school doesn't do anything? Yamada asks. No, Izuku says, getting more confused. Was it not normal for the school to go against one kid? Was his situation different? Did adults actually step in and stop bullying? God, this is so confusing. Izuku drinks the rest of his coffee, then checks the time on his phone. I gotta go or else my mom will be worried, Izuku tells them, and Yamada slides out of the way to let him out. Izuku ignores the pain flaring up in his ribs and shin and jogs home. Why did Kakin have to be so mean? Why was his school the way it was? God, why was everything so confusing yet so simple? He had 2 weeks until the entrance exam. All he had to do on the beach now was a couple of old furniture. It was a minuscule pile compared to what it was before. There was probably a bunch of nails that he couldn't find, but that was okay. He wasn't going to scour every inch of the beach. Izuku sighs and gets to work pulling the last things onto the truck and looks out at the beach and smiles. It was clean again and you could see the coastline. It was so pretty. It would be nice to come down here and relax. Izuku takes a deep breath and smells the salt of the ocean. Yeah, this was really nice. Now he just had to get into UA and then into the hero course. He just had to believe in himself and set a plan and follow it. He could do it. He had to. Izuku messes with his sleeves as he walks into UA. It was really weird to actually be going into the building. Yeah, he wasn't actually going to the school yet, but it was still surreal to even go into the building. Yes, he did originally choose to go here because of All Might, and he would have chosen a different school, but it still was the best hero school in Japan. Izuku walks into the building and goes to his appointed test room. He finds a seat next to a guy with lilac hair and large eye bags. Well, he couldn't comment. He also had large bags from staying up late and studying. He was also perpetually exhausted. Izuku thinks about talking to the kid next to him but decides against it and looks down at his hands. He starts to mess with his fingers, moving them around and stuff to pass the time. The guy sitting next to him sighs and finally talks. Shinso Hitoshi, he says dryly, holding his hand out. He actually reminded him a lot of Aizawa. Midoriya Izuku, he replies, shaking his hand. As the last people finally file in, Midnight and Aizawa walk in to start their exams. When Izuku sees Aizawa, he gives him a large smile. Aizawa sees him and shoots him a quick small smile back. Then begins to explain how the exam will go while Midnight passes out the test. Izuku grabs out his pencil and gets ready to start the test. He was confident in his abilities to be able to pass the test. He was a little nervous, but he knew he could do it. He had to, and because he had to, that meant that he could. Aizawa finishes explaining the exam and tells everyone to get started. Izuku takes a deep breath and does some things to ease his anxiety. He then gets started on the test. The questions were hard, but he had taken a 2-week break from his heavy workout to study. He still worked out, just did some lighter, easier, less time-consuming workouts. Midnight and Aizawa collect the tests and tell everyone that if they don't have the physical exam they can go home. Izuku stands and pops his shoulders. Shinso also stands next to him. Are you doing the physical? Izuku asks him. He nods. I'm not, but that's because it's skewed totally towards combative flashy quirks, but I hope you do well, Izuku tells him, then grabs his bag and starts to leave. Shinso grabs his wrist and Izuku tenses up immediately. Izuku turns around to look at him. What do you mean skewed towards flashy quirks? Shinso asks and Izuku relaxes. Well, you have to fight robots, so if you don't have something that is flashy, physical, or combative, you probably won't be about to do anything or do well, Izuku explains. Shinso seems to think this over, then finally lets go of Izuku's wrist. Izuku pulls his wrist close to himself and rubs it slightly as he walks. He hated when other people touched him. Every time someone touched him, it made him feel all itchy and uncomfortable. He was fine with his mother touching him, but other people, especially suddenly, made him very uncomfortable and scared. Honestly, he was very confused about a lot of things in his life, so this was just another thing to add to his confused list. Izuku walks out the gates and takes a few deep breaths to calm his frantic heart. He finished the test. Why was he so nervous now? The test was over, there was nothing to worry about anymore. He was confident in his abilities and knew he did well on the test. Izuku takes a deep breath, then blinks, and he's in his room. When did he make it home? Izuku blinks a couple times, then looks at the time. It was 30 minutes after the test had ended. He must have disassociated really bad that time. He's disassociated before, but never to the point that he doesn't remember things. Izuku walks out of his room to get some tea. Mom looks up at him when he opens his door. Hey Izuku, how are you feeling? Mom asks. Fine. A little fuzzy, Izuku tells her. She smiles at him, then stands and walks over to the kitchen. Izuku follows her. Mom hands Izuku a mug of hot chocolate. Izuku raises an eyebrow but takes the mug. You were looking really out of it when you got home, Mom explains. I probably did, I mean I don't even remember walking home, so, Izuku tells her. Mom hums and looks away, thinking for a little bit. Should we go to the doctor and see if we should up your anxiety meds? She asks him. Izuku takes a sip of the hot chocolate. Probably. I did start freaking out a little bit after the test. I'm not sure if it was the test or being touched by someone, Izuku explains. Do you want to try therapy as well? Mom asks cautiously. Izuku thinks it over. I probably should, especially since if I get into UA classes and studies are going to be harder and more stressful, Izuku says slowly. Let's look for some options then, okay? Mom says. Izuku nods and takes another drink. Buttons comes up and rubs against his ankles, flopping onto his feet. Izuku smiles and picks up Buttons with one hand, holding the mug in the other. He walks back into his room and sets Buttons down on his bed. Izuku sits down as well and smashes himself in the corner of his bed against his headboard and the wall. Buttons comes up and flops onto his lap and licks Izuku's hand. Izuku pets Buttons and lets the tension seep from his shoulders. He closes his eyes and focuses only on the cat he's petting and the heat of the mug in his hands. He takes another deep breath. He opens eyes and grabs the manga he was reading and opens to the page he left off on. Izuku leaves the building after his first therapy session with his mom. So how was it? Mom asks after a while of them walking to the train station. It was fine, Izuku tells her. He did think it was going to help though. To be able to talk to someone about everything that's happened to him. The bullying and everything else. He was also on a higher dosage of anxiety medication, and that was also helping him. He also liked the therapist he had. She was super nice and didn't pressure him into talking about his issues right away. They basically just did get to know you, things like answering a bunch of random questions. Izuku was also supposed to get the letter from UA today. He was pretty sure he got in, but he also wasn't sure. He could have made 100 different small mistakes. He probably misspelled something and got docked a bunch of points. He probably also missed at least 10 problems. Izuku feels like his blood has frozen and takes deep breaths and starts looking at his surroundings. He names the things that are around him. Like other people. That person with a bright red jacket. The trees. That cloud that looks like a cat. The smell of coffee from the coffee shop they pass. The sound of people talking. Izuku takes another deep breath as they make it to the train station. Maybe he actually just needed different medication, not more of what he had. They will just have to see how this does then decide from there. Mom hands Izuku a letter from UA at around 4 p.m. Izuku walks into his room to open it by himself. Buttons sneaks his way in right before Izuku closes the door, though. Izuku grabs the knife off of his desk and sits down. Buttons hops up onto his lap. Izuku scratches behind his ear, causing him to purr loudly. Izuku uses the knife to open the letter and jumps when a metal disc falls out. A hologram pops out of the disc and All Might shows up on it. Izuku blinks a couple of times, looking at the man who basically crushed his dreams into oblivion. What was he doing on screen? The hologram starts and All Might explains that he will be a teacher at UA for the Hero Course students. He also explains that Izuku did really well and would be attending UA. Oh no. There is no FING way. All Might was going to be teaching at UA. The Hero Course. The course he wanted to get into. That All Might would teach him when he got into the Hero Course. Oh my god, no. That would be the literal worst. Wait, but if he was going to be teaching at UA, in the Hero Course. Izuku could rub it in his dumb face that he actually was going to be a hero. Huh, that would be FNG hilarious. Okay, Izuku could look forward to this. Izuku picks up Buttons as he stands up to go tell his mom that he got in. Izuku opens the door and sees his mom standing outside of it waiting. Mom sees the smile on his face and smashes him in a hug. Also smashing Buttons, who squirms slightly but ultimately accepts his fate. Izuku runs into Shinso at the train station as they both get off. Shinso stares at him for a second, then sighs and starts walking towards the school. Izuku catches up and walks next to him. So, what class are you in? Izuku asks Shinso. General Studies, Class C, Shinso says. Oh same, I'm really excited for class actually. I'm kind of nervous because it's a new school and new people and all that stuff, you know. Izuku trails off when he sees Shinso giving him a weird look. Sorry, I tend to ramble or mumble when talking. Sorry, Izuku apologizes quietly. Shinso gives him an even weird look. Like Izuku is some sort of puzzle to be solved. You were right, you know, Shinso finally says. Izuku blinks a couple of times. About what? He asks. The exam. There were a bunch of robots and it was complete bullshit. How did you even figure it out? Shinso asks. I know, right, it's so dumb, and also you could just look it up. You have to do a little digging, but it's basically just on the school's website, Izuku explains. Shinso nods. They make it to the school and find where their class is and find their seats. Izuku messes with his sleeves as he waits for homeroom to start. A guy wearing makeup walks up to him. Hello, my name is Yamashita Shiro, he introduces. Midoriya Izuku, Izuku tells him. Yamashita smiles brightly at him. Izuku manages a small, nervous smile back and Yamashita beams. So what's your quirk? Yamashita asks. Oh, I can make flowers depending on my emotions. You? Izuku responds. That's so much cooler than mine. I can choose what I smell like. So basically just like putting perfume or cologne on, but I can just naturally do that, Yamashita explains. Izuku's eyes light up. That's seriously so cool though. Can you mix different smells? Or only make a certain type of your body smell a certain way? Does it work like sweat or just a smell you exude? Izuku asks quickly. Yamashita laughs slightly and is about to answer when their teacher walks in. He quickly walks over to his seat as Present Mike walks up to the podium to start their class. He explains a couple of things and then says that they have to go to an orientation for the first day of school. Izuku always hated orientation. It takes so long and is always boring. It almost has no purpose. Present Mike tells them to grab their stuff and line up in any order they would like. Izuku goes for the back, as does Shinso. Once in line, they walk to an outside stage and sit down. Izuku sighs as the principal starts talking. Would he get in trouble for taking a nap right now? That would be nice. I'm pretty sure they don't want us sleeping, Shinso tells Izuku. Izuku jumps, not realizing he had said that out loud. A blush forms on his face and he already knows that there are peonies in his hair. Shinso looks at the flowers in his hair and Izuku's blush deepens, probably causing more flowers to grow. Is this your quirk? Shinso asks, taking a flower out of his hair. No, It's just the wind magically landed flowers in my hair without you noticing. Shinso hides his laugh with a cough and Izuku realizes he said that out loud too. Ugh, I really need to fix my mumbling problem. Izuku groans into his hands quietly. I think you're probably fine. I mean, you say some pretty funny things sometimes, Shinso whispers to him, a smirk on his face. Izuku glares at him through his hands. Shinso's smirk just grows. Izuku rolls his eyes at him and shoves him lightly, causing Shinso to snort and Izuku to try and suppress a giggle. Present Mike sends them a look and they both shut up, sending each other side glances. Izuku covers his mouth with his hand, trying not to burst out laughing. They both have to take deep breaths to get them to settle down. How much do you think Presentation Michael doesn't like us? Izuku asks Shinso, causing him to snort again. Presentation Michael? He laughs quietly. Izuku smirks and nods his head towards Present Mike, causing Shinso to go into another laughing fit, Izuku as well. The rest of the long speech, also known as orientation, goes similarly, with Shinso and Izuku throwing jokes at each other. It finally ends and they are shown to the lunchroom. Izuku wondered what Class 1A was up to since they weren't at orientation. It was probably better than the orientation though. Anything would have been better than orientation. Izuku and Shinso both get their lunch, then sit next to each other at the lunch table farthest in the corner away from the main group of people. They both start eating and talking about whatever comes up. A guy with dark blue hair and a cute girl with a brown bob walk over to their table. Hey, could we sit over here? All the other tables are taken, the girl asks. Izuku just shrugs and looks over at Shinso. Sure, Shinso says. I'm Uraraka Ochako, the girl says, sitting down. Ida Tenya, the guy says, also sitting down. What class are you guys in? We are both in the hero course, Uraraka asks. We're in general studies. What did you guys do today? Izuku asks. Oh, we did a Quirk assessment test and 2 people got expelled, Ida says. 2 people got expelled, why? Shinso asks back to his tired tone. This one kid Mineta came in last and then this other guy Muto got expelled because he wasn't giving it his all and not putting enough effort into the test, Uraraka explains. Izuku nods his head. What did you guys do? Ida asks. Izuku sighs deeply. Shinso snorts and says, I think that explains exactly what we did. Izuku also snorts at that. I'm sure orientation was quite informational and fun, Ida says, chopping his arm. Izuku looks at him puzzled. Why would you think that is fun? We sat there and listened to Niza drone on about tables, Izuku says blandly, causing Shinso to snort and hold in a laugh. That sounds like a great time, Ida says, staying with his opinion. Izuku goes home that day with a smile on his face. 3 days later, Izuku and Shinso are walking to school when they see the gates surrounded by reporters. Izuku sighs and hunches over slightly. Don't like crowds? Shinso asks him. No. I never really have. I don't like people touching me unexpectedly or really at all. I also don't like the feeling of being trapped, Izuku explains. Izuku pulls his sleeves down and hunches into himself and continues to walk forward. Shinso reaches for his shoulder but stops himself. Izuku notices this and stops and looks at him. Are you sure you'll be okay going through the crowd? Shinso asks. Izuku bites his lip and looks at the crowd, then back to Shinso. He could already feel the panic sinking its claws into him just thinking about walking through the crowd. Izuku shakes his head and Shinso nods, thinking. Ida runs up to them suddenly. Hurry, we are going to be late. Ida exclaims, chopping his hands. The sudden movement causing Izuku to flinch. Shinso gives him a look at that. Ida then saw the reporters and seemed to get excited. He marched over to go talk to the reporters like a madman. How is Ida so responsible yet so chaotic? Uraraka comes up and suddenly hugs Izuku, causing him to completely lock up. Uraraka releases him, not noticing his discomfort, and starts to drag him towards the reports. Izuku can only focus on the point of contact between him and Uraraka on his wrist. Shinso, his savior, walks up and says that him and Izuku needed to talk about something before going into the school. Uraraka nods and releases Izuku's wrist from her grasp. Izuku basically sags after she lets go, sinking onto the ground. He sits crisscrossed and puts his head in his hands and takes deep breaths. He rubs his wrist to get rid of the tingly feeling of it. It causes him to shiver. He goes through the breathing exercises that his therapist taught him to stop his impending panic attack. He closes his eyes and puts his head back into his hands. Tears had already sprung to his eyes and slid down his face. Izuku scrubs at his face to get rid of the tears. He then takes a deep breath and bundles all of his emotion and panic into a tight ball and shoves them down. He could deal with them after school. Not now. Izuku stands up and rubs his eyes to get rid of the tears the rest of the way. You good? Shinso asks him after he stands. No, but I'm going to pretend I am and ignore the panic until I get home and can panic then, Izuku tells him honestly. I'm sure if you ever need to leave the classroom the teachers wouldn't care, Shinso says. Izuku just nods his head. Aizawa comes out and manages to get the reporter's attention and Izuku and Shinso sneak by. Uraraka sees them and comes up to them. Shinso makes sure to put himself in between Izuku and Uraraka. That was crazy, Uraraka says. We managed to get around them. What were they asking about? Shinso asks. Just about All Might and such, how he is as a teacher, Uraraka explains. Izuku tenses up at the mention of All Might. Today was just trying to break him. He was 60% sure he could not have a panic attack until he got home. It was getting closer to 50-50 though. He already knew that if he somehow ran into All Might he was doomed. He didn't think All Might was in today but still. You never knew what could happen. Izuku tunes back into his surroundings and he's walking into his classroom. Izuku sits down at his desk. Hey Midoriya, how are you today? Yamashita asks. Izuku quickly throws on a mask of how he usually is. Hey Yamashita, I'm doing alright, how about you? Izuku replies cheerfully. I'm doing great, thank you for asking, Yamashita says. Present Mike comes in and starts the lesson. Izuku was really ready for lunch. He was exhausted physically, mentally, and emotionally. Lunch wouldn't be so bad because it was normally just him and Shinso, sometimes Uraraka and Ida. His plan was just to take a nap during lunch and eat a small snack. He wasn't sure if he would be able to stomach anything though. Izuku sits down at their usual table and lays his head down on the table. The cool table helps with his headache. Izuku closes his eyes when he sees Shinso slide into the table next to him. Are you doing all right, Midoriya? Ida exclaims in his usual tone, causing Izuku to jump. Izuku sighs, yeah, just a headache. Eating would probably help. Also I hope you don't mind but we brought a friend with us, Uraraka says plopping down. Izuku just shrugs. It's fine, Shinso says for him. Cool, I'm Kirishima, the new guy says brightly. Izuku just closes his eyes again and takes a deep breath. Oh hey, there's Bakugo, Kirishima says. Izuku immediately looks up and around for said person and finds him standing a little ways away. Kirishima goes to wave him down but Izuku violently shakes his head. Kaken seeing him here would result in his death. Izuku rather liked his life. Red columbine blooms down his arms. Kirishima gives him a weird look but he stops trying to wave Kaken down, causing Izuku to sag in relief. Izuku plops his head down on the table and lets out a deep breath. His hands shake on his legs. He grips his hands into fists. He now had an about 30% chance of making it home before he had a panic attack. Shinso leans close to him and asks quietly, "You okay?" Izuku shakes his head. If one more thing happened he was pretty sure that would be it. He would fall into the depths of his panic. Is he good? Kirishima asks suddenly, causing Izuku to flinch. Kirishima winces, obviously seeing his flinch. Izuku sits back up and puts his head in his hands. This day is literally trying to kill me. Also my meds apparently do jack shit, he groans into his hands. Meds? Ida implores. I have severe anxiety so I take meds for it but they aren't really doing anything, Izuku explains. Quick question, why are you so scared of Bakugo? Kirishima asks. Izuku looks him dead in the eyes and deadpants. He broke my nose, I think one of my arms, and has dislocated my shoulder at least twice. Everyone stares at him and blinks. He did all of that? Uraraka asks suddenly. Izuku just nods his head then sets it back down onto the table. He takes in a deep breath and sighs. Suddenly an alarm sounds and Izuku's whole body seizes up. What's happening? Ida asks an upperclassman running past their table. Someone's broken into the school, the upperclassman yells, while passing by. Everyone at the table jumps up to leave except for Izuku. Uraraka goes to grab his arm to pull him up, but Shinso stops her by grabbing her wrist. Uraraka looks at him puzzled. I'll stay with him, Shinso tells her, then let's go. He sits down next to Izuku. Izuku is trying to hold back his tears and impending panic. He had like a 10% chance of stopping this panic attack. So yay. Izuku lets out a wheeze. Hey, look at me, Shinso says, drawing his attention to his face. Izuku blinks his eyes and tears start streaming down his face. Izuku starts laughing and wheezing through sobs. Shinso bites his lip, then looks back at Izuku. Hey, I can help. I just need you to respond to me verbally, okay? Shinso asks. Izuku shakes his head, still wheezing. Oh, okay, he wheezes out. Suddenly his mind blanks out. Calm down, Izuku hears Shinso says, and Izuku doesn't get a choice but to comply. Suddenly the blanket covering his mind comes off and Izuku snaps back to his body. Izuku wipes the tears from his face. He looks up at Shinso and he's looking down with his brows knit. Thank you, Izuku tells him shakily. What? Shinso asks, snapping his head up. Thank you for calming me down, Izuku rephrases. You're not mad at me? Shinso asks hesitantly. No, why would I be mad at you? Izuku asks, confused. I used my quirk on you and it's a villain's quirk, Shinso explains. It's not a villain's quirk. It can't be a villain's quirk because you are not a villain, and besides, do you not see how much good you can do with your quirk? You can calm people down like you just did for me. You can stop hostage situations just by getting someone to talk to you. You can also talk people down from suicide. Your quirk is literally so cool, Izuku rattles off. Shinso blinks at him a couple times and his eyes widen. Did he not realize this before? Oh my god, Shinso whispers breathlessly. The group who was sitting around them come back, along with all of the other people who were at lunch. Izuku scrubs his eyes, then leans back into his chair. Shinso is still staring into the void. Are you doing better? Uraraka asks Izuku. He hums and nods his head. What happened? Izuku asks. It was just the reporters, Kirishima explains. Izuku furrows his brows and thinks on that. Shinso leans forward onto the table with his hands on his head. Oh my god, he says again. Izuku snorts and tries to suppress a giggle behind his hand. No, you do not get to laugh. You just broke my brain, Shinso tells him, pointing an accusing finger at him. Izuku bursts out laughing, hiding it behind his hand. He shakes his head. Shinso flips him off with a smile on his face. The other three stare at them as that happens. What happened when we were gone? Ida asks suspiciously. A shocking revelation, Shinso says back to his bored expression. Izuku swivels his head and stares at him. He turns and stares at him back. They blink at each other, then burst out laughing. Kirishima nervously laughs with them. Are they okay? Kirishima asks Uraraka. I'm not sure, Uraraka whispers back to him, causing Izuku to wheeze and Shinso to snort. Shinso and Izuku walk to the station together to head home. What do you think the whole reporter thing was about? Izuku asks Shinso. I don't know, probably just some nosy people wanting a story or scandal, Shinso says. Yeah, probably, Izuku says, rubbing his arms. He didn't have a good feeling about it at all, but it was probably just his anxiety talking. Midoriya added Uraraka, Ida, and Shinso. Uraraka? Oh, what is this? A chat I see? Ida, that is what this is. It's a chat, Uraraka. Uraraka, it's an expression loser. Midoriya, you didn't know what that meant. Ida. Ida, as UA students we should be typing with correct grammar, spelling, and punctuation. Shinso, Ida is such a loser. Also Midoriya, did you do the English assignment yet? Midoriya, yeah, why? Shinso, I need some answers, gimme. Midoriya, do it yourself, loser. Ida, yes, Shinso, you should not be copying anyone's work. Uraraka, pissed. Midoriya, can you give me so answers? Midoriya, no, why is everyone asking me for answers on English? Uraraka, Shinso told us you were fluent, so answers. Midoriya, Shinso. Shinso, my cat is smoking, gotta go. Shinso left the chat. Midoriya, Uraraka. Uraraka, I think I heard something break, so I'm just gonna go. Uraraka left the chat. Midoriya changed Shinso's name to traitor. Midoriya changed Uraraka's name to loser. Ida, Midoriya, do not call our friends such rude names. Midoriya, sorry Ida, my mom just called me for something, gotta go. Izuku closed the chat with a smile on his face. He loved his friends. It was nice to have some true friends. Oak leave geraniums bloom in his hair. He really hoped nothing would happen to his friends. Chat with Midoriya, Ida, traitor, and loser. 7:35. Loser, wait, what happened to the names? Ida, Midoriya changed them when you and Shinso left. Traitor, wow, Midoriya didn't take you as the petty type. Midoriya, one of my whole reasons for wanting to be a hero is spite, don't test me. Ida, Midoriya, that is a very bad motivator for wanting to be a hero. Traitor, actually spite is a good motivator as long as you don't let it consume you. Midoriya, yeah, besides spite isn't my only reason, it is a great motivator for me to go and do stuff and keep moving forward and not spot trying to work towards my goal, but the absolute main reason for become a hero is to help and save people. That's all I've ever wanted to do. It's been my dream since I was 4. Loser, now I feel like my reason for wanting to be a hero is bad after hearing that. Traitor, yes, same. Ida, that is a very admirable reason to be a hero. Midoriya. Midoriya, Uraraka, what is your reason for being a hero? Loser, I want to help my parents, they have a construction company but they don't make a ton. I wanted to help with my quirk but they wouldn't let me and wanted me to do my own dream, but I still wanted to help them, so I want to be a hero to help them. I also want to help and save people, but helping my family is really important to me. Midoriya, that's a wonderful reason to be a hero. Ida, yes, I agree with Midoriya on this. That is very admirable. Traitor, my reason is also spite and proving people wrong and of course wanting to save people. Ida, my reason, for anyone wondering, is to follow in my brother's footsteps and be a hero like him. Traitor changed Midoriya's name to Smallbrock. Smallbrock? I'm dyeing my hair now and you are to blame. Loser changed Smallbrock's name to Petty. Petty changed to Loser's name to Bubbles. Bubbles? I like that name. Petty. Traitor, I'm scared. Petty. Bubbles. Traitor changed Traitor's name to Fear. Ida, please keep the names to your actual names. Fear changed Ida's name to Robot. Robot, that is not true at all. What is the purpose of this? If you have not left for school yet, you should now. 8:30. Bubbles, this bus ride is so boring. Petty, you're on a bus. Robot, yes, we are going on a class field trip to a different building on the UA campus. Fear, ugh, I wish I was over there with you guys. Presentation, Michael, is so boring. Petty, truly. Robot, you should not be texting in class right now. Fear, it's fine. Petty, yeah, it's fine. Bubbles, hey guys, it's Kirishima. Petty, gasp, a wild Kirishima has appeared. Fear, Bubbles, wait, who is everyone in this chat? Petty. Fear. Robot, why are we not telling Kirishima our names when he has asked? Bubbles, so Robot is Ida, got it. Robot, how could you tell when my name in this chat isn't even close to my real name? Bubbles, 1, your hero costume, 2, the way you type gave it away. Petty, yeah, you have a very specific way you talk and type. Robot, what do you mean by that? Fear, the proper grammar and punctuation and just very loud and proper / professional stuck-up way of talking. Robot, I do not talk like I'm stuck up. Bubbles, you kind of do, man. Yeah, Ida, you talk very stuck up. Petty, you aren't, but you kind of seem like it until you get to know you better. Robot, I guess. Petty, sheet. Sorry, Mike Sensei, Izuku mumbles. Yes, sorry, Shinso says flatly. Present, Mike sighs. You two are great students but also cause the most trouble, Mike sighs. Well, technically it's not our fault that Uraraka started texting us in the middle of class and I would just feel terrible not responding, Izuku says. Shinso, catching onto his plan, says, yeah, she would be terribly upset if we didn't respond. Yeah, she would probably cry, Izuku adds. Mike sighs deeply. Alright, you're off the hook for now. Izuku beams and Shinso smirks. They both head back to their seats to continue their work for English. They had his class right after their homeroom, so they had Mike Sensei for 2 class PRDS in a row. It was kind of nice that way though. Izuku was fluent in English because his dad used to call. He still did from time to time, but after he divorced his mom they talked a lot less. He just kind of ditched them, and Izuku felt bitter about that but did appreciate him trying to at least try and get to know Izuku. Even if it was a little awkward. Izuku shifts uncomfortably in his seat. He had a bad feeling about today. He didn't know why though. Maybe going to the beach after school will help. Maybe he could even ask if Shinso wanted to come over. It was a Saturday, so they didn't have school tomorrow. Maybe he could even stay the night. Chat with Petty, Fear, Robot, Bubbles. 55. Bubbles, what happened? Are you guys okay? Robot, I second this. Are you guys alright? Bubbles, we finally made it to the place. Petty, hey, sorry. We are fine, we just got caught by presentation, Michael. Fear, yeah, it was really lame. We managed to guilt trip him though, so it's fine. Petty, hope you guys have fun on your field trip. Fear, without us. Petty, the cool people. Fear, yeah, you guys better be sad and not have fun without us. Petty, God, we both are super petty, huh? 12:45. Petty, hey, where are you guys? I thought you guys were sitting with us at lunch. Fear, yeah, did you just ditch us? Robot, hey, sorry. We got sent home after USJ. Petty, Bubbles, a group of villains attacked us, so they just sent our class home and let everyone else finish the rest of the day at school. Petty, but that's why midnight ran out of our class. Fear, yeah, makes sense. Petty, how are you guys though? Are you? Did anyone get injured? Bubbles, all of the students are okay, but Aizawa sensei and 13 sensei got seriously injured. They are going to be okay, but they got super injured. All of the students are okay though. Fear, that's good that the students are okay, bad for the teachers though. Robot, yeah, I was really afraid for Aizawa. Petty, gas, did Ida just text like everyone else? Sorry, I cope with humor that was probably insensitive. Bubbles, you're fine. Petty, are you sure? Shinso gives him a look. What, I need to make sure I didn't say something I wasn't supposed to, Izuku explains. You are totally fine. It's a coping mechanism, it's good that you told them that so that they know, so don't keep apologizing. You don't need to apologize for everything, Shinso tells him. Izuku winces, sorry. Shinso gives him another look. Izuku goes to apologize again but stops himself by biting his lip. Bubbles, yes, I'm sure it's your coping mechanism. Robot, we'll let you know if it gets too much. Enjoy your lunch though, you too. Bubbles, yeah, and the rest of the school day. I'm gonna take a nap, so talk to me later. Bubbles left the chat. Robot, I am also going to get some rest. Robot left the chat. Hey Shinso, do you want to come over tonight? Izuku asks him after reading the chat. Sure, can I stay over? Shinso asks. Yeah, let me ask my mom, she should be fine with it though, Izuku tells him. Izuku walks to open the door after he hears the bell ring. Buttons runs next to him, rubbing his legs and almost tripping him. Izuku blocks Buttons with his leg as he opens the door to let Shinso in. Hey, Izuku greets Shinso when he opens the door. Izuku moves out of the way to let him in while still trying to block Buttons from getting out. Shinso steps in and closes the door behind him. Then when he sees his cat, he blinks a couple times. You have a cat? Shinso asks quietly. His name is Buttons, Izuku tells him. Shinso bends down and starts to pet Buttons. Buttons flops straight onto his feet and starts purring like a car. Shinso smiles softly and picks Buttons up to still pet him while walking. Shinso takes his shoes off, then follows Izuku into his room. I thought you would have some more hero stuff, Shinso tells him, looking around his room, still petting Buttons. Oh, I did have more hero stuff, it was a bunch of All Might stuff though, and stuff happened with him, so, yeah, Izuku tells him awkwardly. What? Really? What happened? Shinso asks him. It's complicated and I don't really like talking about it, Izuku tells him. Oh, sorry if I was like putting my nose in your business or whatever, Shinso mumbles. No, you're totally fine, I would be curious too. So you were totally not in the wrong. I mean I should probably tell someone but I don't know dash. Izuku says quickly waving his arms around. I understand why you probably wouldn't want to tell me, Shinso cuts him off. Izuku sighs and drops his arms down. Your room is nice though. I like the kind of monotone vibe of it, Shinso says. Yeah, I've been meaning to add brighter colors to it but I didn't know how. For now I just have the colorful plant holders. I was maybe gonna get some colorful pillowcases or something or paint something on my walls. I don't know though, maybe a rug. Izuku starts mumbling about it. I think a rug would be a good idea and maybe some posters or something, Shinso adds. Izuku hums and flops down onto his bed. Shinso sets buttons down and takes his bag off. He walks over and flops down next to Izuku. Do you think that you Rarika and Ida are really okay? Izuku whispers. Shinso sighs. I don't think so, just from their texts they seem a little shaken. They will probably be fine but right now I'm sure they are just shaken after just being attacked by real villains, you know. I'm sure they fought for their lives so, yeah, Shinso answers. Yeah, I'm just worried about them. I mean I'm always worried about others. I think I got it from my mom. Izuku breaths out. Yeah, I'm worried about them too but I'm sure they will be fine, Shinso says. Yeah, Izuku whispers. They fall into silence looking at the ceiling. Buttons jumps up onto the bed and lays down in between them. Well, what do you want to do before we have to eat dinner? Izuku asks Shinso. I'm not sure, I've never had a sleepover before, Shinso tells him. The last time I had one I was I think 4 or 5 so I don't think we want to do what I did then, Izuku tells him. They fall back into silence. What else did Bakugo do to you? You don't have to tell me but it kind of felt like you were holding back on the things he did to you, Shinso finally asks, after a few beats of silence. Izuku sighs. He did a lot of things. He broke my arm once and a couple of my ribs. I have some burn scars from him and cut scars from when he tripped me. He also, Izuku trails off. What was that? Shinso asks. Look, you can't tell anyone this, okay? Izuku finally says. Okay, Shinso says, fidgeting with his hands. He told me to kill myself, Izuku says in one breath. Shinso blinks a couple of times. He slowly turns and looks over at Izuku to see him nervously staring at the ceiling. He told you to what? Shinso whisper yells, sitting up. Izuku winces, sitting up as well. I don't think he meant it, and besides it's not like I would have actually done it. I mean I've thought about it but that's not the point, Izuku mumbles. Yeah, but that doesn't excuse what he said, Shinso snaps, causing Izuku to flinch. I know that but he just is going to be a great hero and I don't want to ruin his chances. Besides I think that UA will help mellow him out, Izuku stutters out quickly. Shinso sighs and pinches his nose. You are too forgiving, Midoriya, Shinso says. Izuku winces again and folds into himself. Did he just ruin a good friendship? Was it now going to become like it did with Kaken? He probably just screwed everything up like he always did. Yeah, just like the useless Deku that he is. I'm sorry for snapping at you, Shinso says softly, snapping Izuku out of his thoughts. Izuku takes a shaky breath in and runs a hand through his hair and pulls out the begonias with it. They were a rich pink-orange color. Izuku continues to monitor his breathing and calm himself down. What is your quirk? Shinso asks him quietly, brow furrowed. I call it blooming emotions. The flowers correspond to an emotion or feeling that I'm feeling. I think it depends on how I interpret the meaning of the flower but I'm still not sure, Izuku explains. What does this flower mean? Shinso asks, pointing to the flowers in Izuku's hands that are wilting and falling to dust. They're begonias. I actually have some in the planter outside my window, Izuku says, pointing to the planter. They mean beware or, dark thoughts. Oh, Shinso says. Well, at least I know 3 of your triggers now. What do the other flowers that I've seen mean? Shinso asks. The red columbine mean anxious or shaking, so they pop up when I'm anxious, obviously, and the peonies mean bashful, so those show up when I'm embarrassed or flustered, Izuku mumbles. A knock at the door startles the both of them and they look over to it. Mom opens the door. Hey, are you two ready for dinner? Izuku hums in agreement and stands up. Shinso follows him a little skittishly. Izuku picks up on it immediately and squints at him but lets it go for now. Izuku and Shinso are flopped on the floor staring at the ceiling again. What are all of those books? Shinso asks suddenly, looking at the bookshelf with his analysis books. Oh, those, Izuku says, sitting up and pulling his second newest notebook out. He passes it over to Shinso. I like to analyze heroes and quirks, Izuku explains. Shinso opens it and flips through it and his eyes widen. This is so much information, Shinso says. Actually, that one is pretty empty as you can see by the blank pages. I still need to go into a full in-depth analysis and fill up those pages so what you're looking at is just like the first draft analysis. So, that's just what I see first and can take away first before actually analyzing it if that makes sense. But yeah, if you would allow it, I would love to analyze your quirk. You can always say no. But I think it would be really cool. I want to analyze everyone in our class, but I guess it's kind of weird. So sorry for asking, just pretend I didn't. It's just kind of creepy and weird, Izuku rambles, slowly tapering off. I don't think it's weird or creepy. It's actually really cool. And sure, you can analyze my quirk. That would probably be very helpful in getting into the hero course. Maybe not right now, but maybe tomorrow, Shinso says. Izuku nods his head. Can I read one of the older ones? Shinso asks. Sure, Izuku says, pulling out a different one and handing it to him. Shinso opens this one and his eyes widen even more than the first book. Holy shit, Shinso whispers. You would do this for my quirk? Shinso asks, looking up at Izuku wide-eyed. Yup, only if you want me to though, of course, Izuku tells him. Shinso just nods and looks back to the notebook. This is amazing, Midoriya. Like what the hell, dude? Why did you hide this amazing talent from me? Shinso exclaims. Izuku blinks a couple of times. Tears form in his eyes and he blinks quickly to try and get them to go away. That means a lot to me that you think it's cool, Izuku tells him, giving him a watery smile. Well, it is, so you better start believing it, Shinso tells him confidently. Sunday comes and goes quickly and then it's Monday morning and time for another day of school. In homeroom, the announcement that the sports festival was coming up in like a week. Half of the class groans at the announcement. Hey, little listeners, it can be a fun time for you guys, Present Mike says. Yeah, let's make it a fun time, a guy named Iwao exclaims. A fun time to die, a guy named Makoto drones. Besides, we can't even compete with a class who went up against real villains. What are we supposed to do against that? Pull up the trauma card. A girl named Shibata asks. Yeah, seriously. The sports festival is just there to make the hero students look good, a girl named Momoka yawns. Besides, what am I supposed to do with my quirk? Make everyone sad after what they went through? A guy named Weno asks. Exactly, the sports festival really is just to make the hero students look good and us look bad. Like, look at this, intensely trained hero students take down a bunch of not trained at all newbies. It's like throwing a child into a ring with a lion and expecting the child to win. Like, yeah, we have PE classes, but those classes don't teach us how to fight. Like, what do the teachers seriously expect us to do? Definitely not win, a girl with a cat quirk named Nakawawa rants. During the talk, Present Mike looked more and more discouraged. Well, I think the teachers, at least me, expect you to try and have fun with it. Yeah, you probably won't win, but you should just enjoy it. They also plan on having some games for a break, so you guys can do that. Present Mike exclaims a lot less enthusiastically than he normally is, but it seemed more real. It seemed more like the Yamada he met at the coffee shop with a broken nose. Present Mike goes back to his normal enthusiastic tone and starts the English lesson. Chat with Petty, Bubbles, Fear, Robot. 10:50. Bubbles. Ugh, Present Mike sensei's class is so boring. Fear. We have Present Mike for homeroom, I'm telling him you said that. Bubbles. Knew he would be so sad I would feel bad. Petty. Then don't say things like that and we won't threaten you. Bubbles. I now know not to cross Midoriya. He's scary. Robot. You should not be on your phones in class, please put them away. Petty. You're on your phone too. Bubbles. Ida looks like he is about to combust right now. Thank you for giving me that sight, Midoriya. Petty. You are very welcome. Fear. Stop being so fancy. Petty to Bubbles. Petty. Also, unlike you losers, I actually like present mixed classes. Fear, that's because you're fluent in English. Also, Midoriya has been keeping another secret from us. Bubbles, gasp, what is it? Fear, he has a cat. Bubbles, how dare you not tell me? Send me pics now, you buttface. Petty, gotta go before I get caught, TD. Izuku and Shinso are walking down to class 1's classroom with a buck of other people. Izuku just wanted to see his friends and try his best to avoid Kaken. Even though he was walking right to his classroom. He was not very smart, but that's okay. Hey, can I hold your hand? It'll help ground me, Izuku asks Shinso, bumping his hand against Shinso's. Shinso responds by taking his hand. Izuku relaxes into the touch. He trusted Shinso. He knew he wasn't going to hurt him, so it was okay. Izuku feels a tingling in his hand and looks down to his hand holding Shinso's. A yellow carnation is sitting there in between their hands. Izuku blinks a couple times because that wasn't what he was feeling. Disdain, disappointment, rejection. Izuku blinked again, realizing something. He looked up at Shinso and saw disdain clearly on his face, looking at the other people in the crowd. Oh my god, Izuku whispered, looking back at the flower. What? Shinso asks, snapping out of his thought process to look down at their hands to see the flower. What does it mean? Shinso asks, but then the flower wilts and dusts away. Izuku looks back up at Shinso and beams. He just figured something new out about his quirk. That helped his mood tremendously. The door to the classroom is suddenly flung open by Kaken, causing Izuku to flinch. Shinso squeezes his hand, reassuring him. Izuku squeezes his hand back. What are you extras doing standing outside our classroom? Kaken snaps, causing Izuku to instinctually fold into himself. Bakugo, you can't call your fellow classmen extras just because you don't know their names, Ida reprimands Kaken. Kaken just rolls his eyes and tries to push past people. Suddenly a kid pushes to the front and pushes Kaken back. We're just here to look at the competition. You know, see the students who survived an attack by real villains, the kid tells them. A bunch of people around the crowd voice their agreements. Izuku just rolls his eyes. Yeah, he came to see who he would have to beat, but it was better to keep quiet about it and analyze from the sidelines. He would also be able to ask Ida and Uraraka about their classmates and get as much information on them as he could. He brought an extra notebook and everything. Kaken just scoffs at the comments and shoves past people. He passes Izuku but thankfully doesn't notice him. Hey, Bakugo! Wait up! Kirishima calls, rushing after him. The crowd quickly dispersed after that, and Ida and Uraraka saw them and came up to them. Hey guys, Uraraka says. Izuku smiles shakily. He lets go of Shinso's hand with a breath out after realizing he was squeezing his hand pretty hard. Sorry for squeezing your hand so hard, Izuku tells him as they all start walking to lunch. It's all right. You have a seriously strong grip though. Like it feels like my hand is bruised, Shinso tells him. Izuku winces and mumbles a sorry. I already said you were fine, Shinso says, knocking his head lightly. Izuku rolls his eyes but doesn't say anything more. Izuku pulls out his notebook and pencil to start writing a quick analysis of what his friends could tell him. Hey Uraraka, Ida, what are your classmates' names and quirks? Izuku asks innocently, like he isn't plotting how to beat all of them. Shinso looks over at him weird, then understands what he's going to do and he smirks. Ida is about to say something when Uraraka stops him. She looks in between Izuku, Shinso, and the notebook with a calculating look. Send me a picture of your cat, then I'll tell you, Uraraka tells Izuku. He sighs but then takes out his phone and sends the first picture he finds of Buttons. It definitely wasn't the last picture he took. Not at all. He had to search long and hard for that picture. Oh my gosh. He's so cute, Uraraka squeals looking at the picture. Okay, what do you want to know? Uraraka asks. Izuku smiles brightly and holds his pen up. Okay, to start with, give me a name, quirk, and how you would describe them and their personality. Izuku rambles off quickly. Uraraka and Ida blink, then Uraraka starts first. Ida says very similar things for the same person. Izuku then quickly rattles off questions about the person's quirk and to have them answer to the best of their knowledge. Uraraka and Ida try to keep up, but they don't know a lot of the answers or never thought about that. Izuku suddenly stops and blinks. He sits up from his hunched form and looks around. What? Shinso asks, looking around as well. Izuku's eyes lock with one gray and a bright turquoise eyes. Izuku's breath catches in his throat. The guy who was looking at Izuku after getting caught looks back at his food. Izuku squints his eyes. Why had he been watching him? Shinso finds the guy Izuku is looking at as well. Who is that? Shinso asks. Izuku shrugs, but he can't seem to look away. The red and white hair contrast was absolutely breathtaking. Who? Ida asks, looking for the same guy. Oh, that's Todoroki, Uraraka explains. Izuku hums, then manages to look back down to his notebook. What does that flower mean? Shinso asks, pointing to the one on his head. Izuku blinks, then runs a hand through his hair to see which flower it is. It was a dwarf sunflower. Izuku's face immediately heats up. It's nothing, Izuku says too quickly. Izuku's so embarrassed the peonies start to bloom down his arms as well as his hair. I think the flowers are saying something differently, Shinso tells him with a smirk. Izuku groans and buries his head into his arms. Izuku mumbles his answer into his arm. What was that? Ida asks. Yeah, I wasn't able to hear that, Uraraka adds. Nosy people. Well, I said it once and I'm not saying it again, Izuku says with a pout. Well, you don't have to be so dramatic, Uraraka says. Well, you don't have to be so nosy, Izuku says petulantly, turning his face up. Shinso rolls his eyes. The next time I'm at your house I'm looking through all your analysis books just to figure out what that flower meant, Shinso tells him. Do you even know what type of flower it was? Izuku asks, his blush going down along with the flowers. A sunflower, Shinso answers, and Uraraka nods agreeing. You do realize there are at least 70 different types of sunflowers, Izuku tells them. The three at the table all look at him. What? Izuku asks. I thought there was only one sunflower and that was a sunflower, Uraraka says. Well, I mean, the sunflower you are referring to is a common sunflower, but there are also the Maximilian sunflower, perennial sunflower, woodland sunflower, a bunch of different types of helianthus, which is a sunflower's scientific name, by the way, Izuku tells them. Well, now I have no idea what kind of sunflower that was, Shinso says, and Izuku smirks at him. Also, for all you know, that flower could have been a black-eyed Susan flower, Sue. You really don't know what type of flower it was, Izuku tells them. Do you know what type of flower it was? Ida asks. Yeah, of course. Who do you think I am? Izuku asks. Oh, that reminds me, one, I need to finish asking you guys about your classmates, and two, I was wondering, Shinso, if you wanted to train with me for the sports festival. Ida, Uraraka, you could join us, but I thought you would be doing your own along with what training the school provides you, Izuku tells them. Sure, Shinso responds. Yeah, I'm good with training by myself, Ida says. I'm fine as well, and I'll tell you more about my classmates if you tell me what type of flower that was, Uraraka says. Izuku groans. It was a dwarf sunflower. How do you tell the difference between the different sunflowers? Shinso asks. They have obvious differences if you know what they are, Izuku tells them. Shinso rolls his eyes. Of course it's an obvious difference, Shinso snarked. Izuku feels the hair on his neck rise again, and he discreetly looks over to where Todoroki sits and sees him staring at him again. He looks almost scornful. Did he do something to Todoroki? He didn't think so, but he's really clumsy, so maybe he ran into him? Maybe he was just being haughty? Izuku wasn't sure, but it was kind of stressing him out. Izuku takes a deep breath and tries to ignore Todoroki's stare. It felt like he was glaring holes into the back of his head. Izuku picks his pencil back up and goes back to asking Ida and Uraraka about their classmates. Todoroki doesn't use half of his abilities? Izuku asks, puzzled when they get to him. Why? I'm not sure. He's really quiet though, always a deadpan look on his face. I don't think I've heard him say a single sentence, Ida says. Yeah, he seems kind of like an a-hole, Uraraka says. Uraraka? Ida gasps. What? I'm right, Uraraka says back. That doesn't mean you should say it, Ida reprimands her. Izuku looks back over to Todoroki. I don't know. He seems kind of sad, Izuku says quietly. Uraraka looks over to him as well. I mean, I guess, but he kind of does that to himself. I mean when we say he doesn't say anything to anyone we mean he doesn't say anything to anyone, Uraraka tells them. Izuku hums and goes back to his notebook. Maybe he could get Aizawa to watch his class train to analyze their quirks. He would show them the analysis of course. Well, he would show it to them after the sports festival because, competition. The only problem with watching them train would be Kaken, but he could probably just chill in the observation deck and not even run into Kaken. Yeah, that would be a good idea. He and Aizawa would still meet up at the beach at least once a week. He even got his phone number to message him if he wanted to talk or needed help. He could probably ask him at the beach or see if he wanted to go to a cafe with him and ask him if he could. Yeah, that would be a good idea. I have no idea what you said, I couldn't catch any of the words you said, Uraraka says, and Izuku's whole face heats up so hot that he's probably glowing red. Sorry, I tend to mumble and ramble and just go on tangents and I am now so sorry. Izuku mumbles quietly but loud enough for everyone at the table to be able to hear. You need to stop apologizing, Shinso tells him. Yeah, only apologize when you need to, Midoriya, Ida says. Sorry, Izuku mumbles, causing Shinso to roll his eyes. The bell rings for lunch to end. See you guys after school, Izuku tells Ida and Uraraka as they get up and leave. Izuku packs up the rest of his stuff and gets up and walks to class with Shinso. Izuku, Aizawa, and Yamada all sit at a cafe. You wanted to ask me something? Aizawa asks Izuku after taking a sip of his coffee. I was wondering if I could watch your class train one day? Izuku asks hesitantly. Why? Aizawa asks suspiciously. Izuku's mind immediately jumps to Todoroki, but he shakes his head to get rid of that thought. I wanted to analyze their quirks and fighting abilities, Izuku responds. How good is this analysis? Yamada asks. Izuku takes a sip of his coffee, then reaches into his bag and pulls out one of his older analysis books and the one he was working on today at lunch. He hands them over to Yamada. He quickly flips through the newer one. You already have this of his class, Yamada tells him. Not really, that is just the stuff that Ida and Uraraka knew about their classmates, so that is very opinionated. It's also not in-depth at all. Most of the stuff I have written is just inferences, but I want to see actually fight and use their quirks to get a true analysis on them, Izuku tells them. Thinking about the analysis pulls his thoughts back to Todoroki. Also, do you know why Todoroki doesn't use his fire side? Izuku asks. No, Aizawa says as he takes the book on his class from Yamada and starts to go through it. Yamada opens his old one while taking a sip of his drink and chokes on it. His eyes widen comically as he sets his drink down and reads through the page. Where did you get all of this information? Like, this is insane. Like, Dimin. Yamada says. Aizawa looks over to the book Yamada is holding away from his face to try and take in all of the information. Aizawa's eyes widen and he takes the book from Yamada's hands and reads the first few sentences. This is your analysis? Aizawa asks. Yeah, I'm not completely done with that book yet though, just towards the end though, so what you're reading is my full analysis on whatever hero, person, or quirk you're reading about, Izuku explains. I would let your class read the analysis I did on them and you because it would probably be easier for you to teach them that way. I mean, the main reason I want this right now is so that I can at least make it far in the sports festival so I can get transferred to the hero course, Shinso as well, but after the sports festival I would love to show them the analysis and help them with their quirks. I also can't do a full analysis without asking them questions. I can really only do it on heroes because of interviews and websites that have some answers on the quirks, Izuku rambles. You're trying to get into my class? Aizawa asks. Well, you do have 2 open spaces, so Izuku trails off. Speaking of classes, what do you think of present mic? Yamada asks. Izuku has to resist the urge to roll his eyes. Aizawa does though, still reading through his analysis. Yamada really read through some of his analysis and still thought that he didn't know that he was present mic. Well, I mean, he's kind of loud and annoying. He doesn't teach class really all that well and he isn't very nice. Izuku deadpans, looking Yamada dead in the eyes. Aizawa snorts and hides a laugh in his scarf while Yamada squawks. He knows you're present mic, Yamada, chill, Aizawa tells him after calming down. So you don't really think those things? Yamada asks. Izuku snorts. No, not at all. You are a little loud sometimes, but I just don't like loud sudden sounds, but other than that you're a great teacher, Izuku tells him. Wait, when did you figure out I was present, Mike? Yamada asks. The day I met you, Izuku tells him. How? Yamada is laying his head onto the table. Did you read his analysis? Aizawa asks. Yamada just groans again. Oh, another request, if you do let me analyze your students, could you make it so they don't, see me? Well, just one student can't see me, everyone else is fine. It's just that one student isn't on the best of terms with me, Izuku asks. Is it Bakugo? Aizawa asks. Izuku goes to make up excuses but then remembers Shinso's reaction. Izuku just sighs and slouches down. Of course it is, Aizawa sighs and takes a large sip of his coffee. Is this the same kid who broke your nose? Aizawa asks. Izuku just grimaces and takes a sip of his coffee. Aizawa sighs deeper and also takes a sip of his coffee. He won't get in trouble, will he? Izuku asks hesitantly. He broke your nose and you're asking if he is going to get in trouble? Yamada asks after sitting up. Izuku folds into himself at the look. Well yeah, he used to be my friend, well only friend and childhood friend, so yeah. Izuku mumbles. I'll probably talk to him and monitor his behavior from now on, but no, he won't really get in trouble, Aizawa explains. Izuku lets out a breath of relief. Also, you can watch my class tomorrow, come in during your 5th PRD to your 6th, so just come in right after lunch, I'll let your teachers know. I'll also just have Bakugo go to a counseling session or something else during the time you are there, Aizawa tells him, and Izuku nods his head. Izuku takes another sip of his and takes the conversatoin to something different. The bell rings at lunch and Izuku gets up with Ida and Uraraka. He already let Shinso know that he was going with them and told him goodbye. Ida looked at him funny. You should not follow us to our class. You will be late to your class, Ida says, chopping his hand up and down. I'm going to your class because I'm supposed to, Izuku explains. Wait, you get to come to our class today? Uraraka asks excitedly. Izuku hums. Yeah, I'm doing an analysis of your class. I mean, already kind of did with the information you gave, but that wasn't enough for a full in-depth analysis, Izuku explains. Oh, well, when you are done with mine can I read it? Uraraka asks. Yep, after the sports festival, Izuku tells her. She pouts but goes on. They almost make it to the class when they see Bakugo stomp out and towards the locker room. Ida is about to call out to him, but Izuku stops him by slapping a hand over his mouth. Bakugo rounds the corner and Izuku then takes his hand off of Ida's mouth. Why did you do that? He should not be leaving earlier than the rest of the students, Ida basically shouts. Aizawa let him out early, Izuku explains calmly, trying to keep the shake out of his hands from Ida's sudden exclamation. They walk into the class and the people who are in there already look over to see who came in. Oh, who's the new person? A girl with pink skin, Izuku assumes is Ishido, asks sitting up further in her seat. Yo, Midoriya, what are you doing here? Kirishima asks him, walking over to him. Izuku gives him an anxious smile and can already feel the columbine blooming in his hair. Problem child, Aizawa says from the corner. Izuku gives everyone another wobbly smile, then walks over to Aizawa. Yeah. Izuku asks him quietly once he makes it to him. I just saw that you were getting overwhelmed and thought it was a good idea to call you over. I also have to tell you something anyways, Aizawa explains quietly to him so no one else can hear. Out of the corner of his eye, he can see the pink-skinned girl leaning forward in her desk, obviously trying to hear their conversation. Aizawa glares at her and she immediately sits back. Thank you for calling me over, that was a big help, and what did you want to tell me? Izuku asks quietly, ignoring what he saw. 1. You have to call me sensei while we are in class, also to ask if you wanted to stand at the front or sit next to Uraraka or Ida or something like that, Aizawa explains. Oh, I'll just sit next to Uraraka if that is okay, Izuku says. Yeah, grab that chair and pull it next to her, Aizawa explains. Izuku nods, then grabs the chair and sits next to Uraraka. Oh, you get to sit next to me, Uraraka says with a smile and leans over to look at him. Izuku checks the time and sees that they still have 5 minutes. Kirishima and the pink girl walk up to him. So what are you doing in our class, Midoriya? Kirishima asks. Oh, I'm doing an analysis, it's for Aizawa, Izuku says. Sensei, he remembers and adds on quickly. I'm Mina Ishido, the pink-skinned girl said. Nice to meet you, Izuku says quietly. Kirishima starts talking about something or another that happened. Izuku feels a gaze and the side of his head and his eyes drift over to Todoroki, who is glaring at him. Izuku smiles shyly at him, then goes back to the conversation. Is actually quite good, I don't know why people dislike it, Kirishima says. Izuku just blinks a couple times, missing the whole conversation. Are you okay? Uraraka asks, suddenly causing Izuku to flinch slightly. Yeah, I just spaced out for a second, sorry, Izuku tells her with a bright smile. You're alright, you're just shaking, Uraraka tells him. He blinks a couple times and looks down at his hands to see them shaking. Probably just nerves or something. I could just be overwhelmed, or it's my meds. There are a ton of things that could be the cause, Izuku tells her and squeezes his hands into fists. The bell rings and everyone who wasn't sitting down scramble to their seats. Aizawa stands up at the podium. As a lot of you have seen, we have someone new in here. He is only here to observe your quirks and fighting styles to give an analysis. You will get this analysis after the sports festival because it takes a while to get all the information in. Izuku almost snorts at that it didn't take him that long. He will probably only be here for today to observe, possibly other days, but for now only today. Don't ask him questions or crowd him. Go get changed, Aizawa explains, then walks out. Everyone stands up and follows him. Izuku catches up to him easily. Do I have to change? He asks quietly, making sure no one with normal hearing could hear. Aizawa thinks it over, then shakes his head. Izuku nods his head, then falls into step with Ida and Uraraka and a girl with what looks like a frog quirk. He remembered her from what Uraraka and Ida told him. Izuku still feels someone's gaze on his back, but he can't look behind himself without looking weird. Izuku shifts uncomfortably but continues walking and tries not to pay attention to the person staring at him. He really wanted to know who was staring at him. Izuku rubs his arms and follows Aizawa while the class goes to change. What did you do to Todoroki? Aizawa asks, as they walk to the observation room to wait for the class. What do you mean? Izuku asks, confused. He's just been glaring at you since you walked into the classroom, Aizawa explains. Izuku draws his eyebrows together. That was odd. He hasn't even talked to Todoroki once. I mean, yeah, he did stare at him for a little bit at lunch, but that was because he stared at him first. Izuku sighs and shakes his head. I'm really not sure, I've never talked to him, Izuku tells him. Aizawa opens the observation room door for him and Izuku steps inside, then immediately freezes. Just his FING luck. Izuku takes a deep breath and squeezes his fist and forces himself to walk into the room so Aizawa can get inside as well. All Might startles when Izuku and Aizawa walk in. Ah, Aizawa, you didn't tell me another student was in your class, All Might says in his true form. Izuku takes deep breaths to try and stop the shaking in his hands and the tears in his eyes. Young man, I hope you can keep a secret, All Might tells Izuku. Izuku's heart drops. All Might didn't even remember him. He didn't remember. Izuku feels flowers bloom in his hair and pulls one down. Lavender. Obviously it would be lavender. Izuku smashes the flower in his hand and holds his notebook closer to his chest. Yeah, I can keep a secret, Izuku mumbles. All Might has the audacity to smile at him. Aizawa gives Izuku a look. This wasn't how he thought that Izuku would react at all. Just to add, he isn't in my class, Aizawa tells him. Not yet, Izuku says quietly, not loud enough for All Might to hear. Aizawa smirks and nods his head. You can just sit in that chair right there, Aizawa says, nodding to the chair next to All Might. Izuku tenses but walks over and sits down. He keeps his notebook close to his chest though and waits for the class to come in so Aizawa and All Might can explain the lesson. All Might buffs up when they hear students talking and walking towards the room. The students walk in and see All Might and get excited. Izuku just folds into himself more. After Shoyuta and All Might finish explaining how the exercise will go, the students all get ready to go. Shoyuta looks back over at Midoriya with concern. He wasn't acting like he normally did and it was worrying him. Shoyuta knew that the problem child loved heroes, but he didn't even really react to All Might other than tensing. Shoyuta sends the first group out to do the exercise. For the first time since walking in Midoriya finally set his notebook down. Something was definitely up. What did All Might do to Midoriya? If anything. I mean, Shoyuta didn't like All Might himself, but a kid who was a hero fanatic to not like All Might was just odd. Shoyuta didn't like not knowing things, and he didn't know what was wrong with Midoriya. Shoyuta really needed a coffee right now. Or a shot of vodka. Either one would work. Shoyuta sighed deeply. He flopped down into his chair next to Midoriyas. Shoyuta looks back at Todoroki to see him still staring at Midoriya. He couldn't quite discern how Todoroki was looking at Midoriya either. He couldn't tell if it was disdain, anger, or confusion. Maybe a mix of all of them. Shoyuta sighs again and looks at the screens showing his students getting ready to start the exercise. Shoyuta would just have to talk with Midoriya after class about the All Might thing. He already asked about the Todoroki thing and Midoriya said he didn't do anything so it should be fine. He would maybe talk to Todoroki about it. Shoyuta focuses back in to watch his students start the exercise. He looks back at Midoriya one last time to make sure that he was okay. Midoriya was immersed into his writing and looking at his students to make observations and his analysis. At least he wasn't as tense then when he first came in. The exercise finally comes to an end and Shoyuta sends his class to go change. All Might had already dipped at the end of the first hour, not being able to hold his for any more, which made Shoyuta roll his eyes. Shoyuta calls Midoriya to stay back. Midoriya stands before him. The red flowers that always bloom when he's nervous show up. It's nothing bad, Shoyuta tells him, and Midoriya instantly relaxes. You don't have to answer this, but I noticed that you seemed really tense and nervous around All Might, Shoyuta says, and Midoriya instantly tenses and the red flowers come back into his hair. You really don't have to answer, Shoyuta hurriedly says, worried he just ruined Midoriya's trust. Midoriya sighs and shakes his head. Shoyuta notices him squeezing his fingernails into his hands in a fist, a bad habit that Shoyuta had noticed. It wasn't the worst since he hadn't drawn blood yet, but it could get to that point. Midoriya takes in a deep breath. All Might about, I think, 10 months ago, saved me from a slime villain. I wanted to ask him something but he was trying to leave. I made a stupid decision and grabbed onto his leg when he went to jump away. He asked me to let go in the middle of the air. Like an idiot, I had to tell him that I would die if I did. He landed on a roof and I asked him if I could be a hero with a non-combative quirk. When I looked back up at him, he was in his true form and explained why he was like that. After he told me his story, he told me that I couldn't be a hero with a non-combative quirk. Midoriya explains, squeezing his hands tighter. Shoyuta got increasingly more angry at All Might. He told a kid, who was probably depressed and needing validation, that they couldn't do the thing that they always wanted to do and strive to do. Thank you for telling me, Midoriya, Shoyuta says, reining in his anger for Midoriya. Midoriya nods his head then says, he also didn't even remember me. I guess that interaction didn't even mean anything to him, not even close to what it meant to me. Tears stream down Midoriya's face and he lets out a choked sob. Shuta's heart breaks. Shoyuta goes to pull him into a hug but remembers how he reacted when he touched him on the shoulder a couple weeks ago. Can I hug you? Shoyuta asks, opening his arms for Midoriya to decide. Midoriya nods his head and basically launches himself into Shuta's arms and hugs him tightly. Shoyuta wraps his arms gently around Midoriya. He slides one hand onto his head and rubs it gently, running into some dark purple flowers. Midoriya lets out a loud sob, making Shoyuta wrap his arms around him tighter. This poor child. Shoyuta was going to murder All Might. Midoriya manages to pull himself together enough to at least stop crying. When he pulls back from Shoyuta, he can see him shaking. You have your stuff on you, so you should head home now, Shoyuta tells him. Midoriya shakes his head. Can we just go to a cafe or something? I just hate worrying my mom, and if she saw that I was crying she would really freak out, Midoriya explains. Shoyuta nods his head. Do you have any cafe in mind? Shoyuta asks as he pulls out his phone to text Namuri and see if he can sub for his class for the last 15 minutes of the class. There is this cat cafe I enjoy going to. I can take you to it, Midoriya tells him. Shoyuta nods his head again. Namuri texts him back and says that he can but asks him why. Shoyuta tells her that he will tell him later. Shoyuta texts Hizashi and asks him to grab his stuff and to get the car. Come on, let's go, Shoyuta tells him. Midoriya blinks a couple of times and some of the fogginess in his eyes clears. What about your class and me checking out? Midoriya asks. It's fine if Nizu asks, I'll let him know that I was helping you. Also, Midnight is subbing for my class for the last few minutes, Shoyuta explains to him. Hizashi texts him back that he's on his way to the car. Shoyuta would have to have a talk with All Might tomorrow. Calming Midoriya down and keeping him calm was his top priority right now. Midoriya nods and the fogginess comes back to his eyes and he kind of blanks out on his face. Shoyuta furrows his brows, then realizes what was happening. He was dissociating. Shoyuta very slowly and carefully grabs Midoriya's arm and guides him out of the observation room. Midoriya follows Shoyuta easily. Shoyuta would probably have to just guess wherever the hell this cat cafe if he couldn't get a response out of Midoriya. Hey Midoriya, where is this cat cafe? Shoyuta asks quietly once they get outside of the building and start walking towards the car. Midoriya blinks a couple times and furrows his brows, obviously deep in thought. Cat cafe? Midoriya asks and shakes his head slightly. Midoriya hums and manages to give him an address. Shoyuta writes it down in his phone quickly. They make it to the car and Shoyuta lets go of Midoriya's arm and opens the back door for him. Midoriya gets in without a fuss or even really reacting. He must dissociate really bad for him not to react at all. Hey little listener, Hizashi says when he sees Midoriya get in the car. Shoyuta gets into the passenger seat of the car. Midoriya blinks a bunch at getting addressed. Shoyuta notices he didn't put his seatbelt on and reaches back and does it for him, then buckles his own. Shoyuta watches as Midoriya squeezes his hands into a white-knuckled grip. Is he all right? Hizashi asks Shoyuta. Shoyuta sighs and shakes his head. He shows Hizashi the address and he plugs it into a GPS and pulls the car out of the parking lot. I'm pretty sure he was holding back a panic attack when he was near All Might. And don't ask about why All Might was causing him a panic attack, it's not my thing to share. He told me when I asked, then after he told me he started sobbing. I don't know if that was a panic attack or him just overwhelmed with emotions. Now he is dissociating and bad, Shoyuta explains. Hizashi hums and turns on some music that normally helps Shoyuta when he dissociates. Shoyuta closes his eyes for a minute just to relax. He already didn't like All Might, but now he hated him. How could he do that to a child? Yeah, it makes sense to let a child down gently if they have literally no chance of getting their dream, but you should let them dream and at least try. Also, it wasn't impossible for Midoriya to become a hero. I mean, he cleaned up a whole beach just because he wanted to give back to his community. Shoyuta sighs again. What's up? Besides the obvious with Midoriya, Hizashi asks and grabs Shuta's hand. I'm just thinking about how I'm going to bring this up to All Might. Shoyuta answers honestly. How are you thinking of doing it right now? Hizashi asks, probably just trying to distract Shoyuta to calm him down. Right now, all I want to do is scream and yell at All Might. It might not be that, but I will definitely berate him, Shoyuta tells him. What he did was that bad? Hizashi asks, squeezing his hand. Shoyuta just grunts in confirmation. Hizashi pulls into the parking lot of a small cat cafe and Shoyuta gets out of the car. Midoriya does as well. A lot of the fogginess has left his eyes. Shoyuta guides Midoriya into the cafe and to a booth. Hizashi walks to the front to order for them, already knowing both of their orders. A cat jumps up onto Midoriya's lap and he pets the cat. Midoriya kind of hyper-focuses on the cat, but that was better than not focusing on anything at all. Hizashi sits down in the booth with them and hands them their coffee. Well, he just sets Midoriya's in front of him. As Midoriya pets the cat, the fogginess in his eyes dissipates. How are you feeling? Shoyuta asks gently. Better, thank you, Midoriya says quietly. He looks up and blinks a couple of times. When did we get here? Midoriya asks. Oh, so it was that bad of dissociating. A couple of minutes ago, Shoyuta tells him gently. Midoriya just hums and takes his coffee and takes a sip. Have you dissociated before? Hizashi asks him. Yeah, I have. It normally only happens after or during a panic attack, or when I'm emotionally overwhelmed, or I hold my emotions in too long. Like I did after the entrance exam, I'm going to therapy and that has really been helping. I also take anxiety meds but these ones aren't working the best but we are giving it a couple more weeks to see what happens, Midoriya explains. Midoriya takes his phone out and starts texting someone. Would you two like to come over to dinner tonight? I've been meaning to introduce you guys to my mom since I've been with you a lot since I've met you and she's been wanting to meet you too, Midoriya asks. Shoyuta thinks it over then shrugs and looks at Hisashi. We would love to, Hisashi says. Cool, just come over at around 5:00-5:30-ish, Midoriya tells them. Izuku is sitting in his room doing his homework at 4:50 when there is a knock on the front door. Hey, Izu, can you get the door for me? Mom asks him. Izuku sets his book down and gets up and walks to the door. He opens the door to Aizawa and Yamada. Hey, come on in, Izuku tells them and steps out of the way to let them in. They both step in. How you feeling, little listener? Yamada asks him quietly. A lot better, Izuku tells him. Buttons comes running up to see the new people. He rubs against Aizawa's legs then flops down on his feet and purrs, one of his favorite things to do. Aizawa's face softens and he picks Buttons up. Didn't know you had a cat, Aizawa says. I don't really talk about him. His name is Buttons, Izuku tells them and walks into the living room. Aizawa and Yamada follow him after taking their shoes off. Mom comes out of the kitchen and greets both Aizawa and Yamada. I'll be done with dinner in about 5 minutes, Mom informs them. Aizawa and Yamada both nod their heads. Have you finished your homework yet? Yamada asks him. No, I just have a math page though, Izuku tells them. English isn't too hard for you, is it? Yamada asks him. No, my dad lives in America, so when I was younger and he called once a week I learned English to be able to talk to him better, so I'm fluent, Izuku explains. You don't talk to him anymore? Aizawa asks. Not really, after he divorced my mom it just got awkward when he called. He still does from time to time and he also gives my mom some money to help with me and stuff but not enough that my mom doesn't have to have a job like she did when they were married, but she makes sure to be home when I'm home for school which is really nice, Izuku rambles. Aizawa nods his head. Dinner is ready now, Mom says and they all get up to go and eat. About halfway through dinner Mom finally says something. It's so nice to finally meet you too. Izuku always talks about you and has such nice things to say. I would love it if you two would come over once a week. Of course you don't have to but I would love to learn more about the adults that have done so much for my Izuku, Mom says. Izuku blushes slightly but manages to keep it under control. Aizawa blinks a couple of times, he looks a little taken aback. That would be nice, Aizawa says hesitantly. Yeah, that would be wonderful. We would also like to learn more about the women who raised such a wonderful young man, Yamada says excitedly after getting confirmation from his husband that it was okay. Izuku definitely doesn't blush at the comment Yamada made. Not at all. Mom suddenly startles. You would be all right with that, right, Zu? Mom asks. Yeah, for sure. Thank you for asking, Izuku tells Mom. She smiles kindly at him. Mom goes to asking Aizawa and Yamada questions about them, with them also asking questions about her. Izuku appreciates being able to just listen and relax. They have made it to the living room with Yamada trying lemon balm tea from Izuku's plant box. Izuku having his own lavender tea. This is actually better than regular tea. I think you would even like it, Shoyuta, Yamada says. Aizawa grunts taking a sip of his coffee that he was holding. Mom hides a giggle behind her hand. Oh, this reminds me, Zu, Mom says as Izuku takes a sip of his tea. Do you have any crushes? Mom asks him. Izuku chokes on the tea and his face immediately heats up to a bright red, peonies blooming down in his hair. Izuku coughs and sets his tea down. He shakes his head vehemently. What was it with everyone asking him things while he was drinking something? Ooh, who is it? Yamada asks, immediately jumping onto the conversation. Izuku's face somehow gets hotter and probably brighter. He probably looked like a tomato. Izuku groans and covers his face with his arms. It's a guy, he mumbles into his arms. I didn't hear that, sweetheart, Mom says. Izuku just sinks into his seat. Mom just laughs at him. Don't worry, sweetie, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to, Mom tells him. Izuku just hides in his arms, making Mom giggle and Yamada laugh. Wednesday and Thursday pass by uneventfully with Yamada dragging Aizawa to Izuku's house for dinner on Thursday. Mom was very happy about that. Izuku can already tell that they are going to be good friends. Izuku also thinks that Aizawa only agreed to go because after Yamada somehow convinced him to try the tea, it's become his favorite. Aizawa doesn't even like tea all that much but apparently loves the stuff Izuku grows. Which is a little odd, but Izuku isn't going to complain about it because he was starting to grow too much. Izuku was also training more than he normally would but didn't push himself over the edge. He did that before and he still regretted it. He ended up with a fever and was stuck in bed for 2 days. He also couldn't perform at the level he used to before he overworked himself. The sports festival was next Wednesday and Izuku really wanted to do good so he would be able to transfer. He was going to transfer whether it killed him or not. He also started to help Shinso so he could transfer with him. The only problem with transferring was Kaken. He would have to confront him eventually. It would probably happen at the sports festival. Maybe it would be better at that time than when he transferred. Izuku flops down into his desk Friday morning. As usual, Yamashita comes up to Izuku and asks how his day has been so far and Izuku asks the same. Also, this is probably a weird question, but how do you get your makeup to look so good? I've tried and failed miserably, Izuku asks. Yamashita gets a faraway look on his face as if thinking back to a bad memory. Practice. A lot of practice, he finally tells him. Also, tips. For eyeliner, don't add too much. Do a little bit at a time, not all at once. And for eyeshadow, blend like your life depends on it. Blending helps everything. Also choose compatible colors when doing eyeshadow and start out with neutral colors, Yamashita adds as an afterthought. Thank you, I'll have to try that sometime, Izuku thanks him. Yamashita hums and then heads back to his seat. Present Mike kicks the door open as he usually does as the bell rings. Yeah. Present Mike yells. Izuku flinches slightly but he's gotten pretty used to Present Mike yelling randomly. Present Mike was a nice loud while Kaken was a bad, scary, loud. Well, any loud wasn't really nice, but Present Mike loud was easier to deal with than explosions from Kaken. Wow, how did he end up on a tangent about different types of loudness? He also has now missed most of what Present Mike has said. Well, oh, I've been meaning to ask you and I've only just joined you guys for lunch, but how well is your analysis of our class? Kirishima asks Izuku at lunch. Izuku stops his writing in his notebook. He was working on his analysis of Shinso at the moment as well as the class. He had the basic information from his observations and was still expanding on that. He also needed to ask the class questions, especially Todoroki. He didn't understand why he wouldn't use his full quirk. Why he would reject a part of himself. Like, yeah, the quirk wasn't the only thing about a person, but it was a big part of a person who had one. It was a deep biological thing. So Todoroki rejecting a part of his quirk was like him rejecting one of his limbs. It was irrational and made no sense. Shinso lightly pokes Izuku's arm. What? Sorry, I got lost in thought. What was the question? Izuku asks. Shinso lightly chuckles at him. Thinking about this crush of yours? Shinso asks him. Izuku squints at him. Did Yamada put you up to this? Izuku asks suspiciously. I will neither confirm or deny that he talked to me after class on Thursday and asked if I knew anything about this mystery crush, Shinso says. Izuku snorts. Well, they don't exist, so, Izuku tells him. Maybe he did have a crush, but he would rather die than admit. I mean, he already kind of did, but that wasn't the point. The question I asked was, how is your analysis on my class? Kirishima asks again. It's not even close to being done. I still need to ask most of your class questions and stuff about their quirks and stuff, Izuku explains. Ooh, you can ask me stuff, Midoriya, Uraraka says excitedly. Oh, just give me a minute to get to your page, Izuku says, flustering slightly. Why did he have to be bi? Why was he cursed to like both genders? Why was everyone so hot? Izuku flips through the pages until he gets to Uraraka's page. It doesn't look that great right now because this is just like the first draft of it. I'll get a new notebook and add the cleaned up version of it and add a drawing, Izuku tells her. This is the not finished version? Uraraka asks. Kirishima is staring at it with his mouth hanging open in shock. Well, Yeah, normally I'll have about 2 to 3 pages for a hero or in this case an upcoming hero, Izuku explains. That's literally so much, dude. Also, that is literally so manly, Kirishima says brightly. Manly? He's pretty sure he's heard Kirishima say that before, but Izuku shakes the thought off. Thank you? Izuku says hesitantly. Kirishima beams at him and nods. You have one on me too, don't you? Kirishima asks. Yeah, everyone in your class, along with Shinso. I also have one on myself. I actually have my own notebook for myself and my quirk so I can write stuff down I figure out and put notes down on how to improve fighting techniques, or eating habits I should try to be healthier, my workout plan and how it changes depending on what I'm doing, also my plan for Shinso's training, since I'm helping, Izuku tells them. Also, I'm sure there is one on your crush, Shinso basically sings. Izuku's face burns up and says peonies blooming in his hair. That is undisclosed information on a non-existent thing, Izuku says, turning his nose up and pouting, causing Shinso to snicker. Anyways, let's get back to the analysis. Are you sure you're okay with me asking you some questions? They can get pretty personal, Izuku asks Uraraka. Yeah, it's fine, Uraraka says. Izuku smiles and starts asking his questions. The rest of Saturday goes on like normal. Sunday, Shinso comes over. All right, which notebook is the analysis of your quirk? Shinso asks, looking at Izuku's books of analysis. Izuku flops back onto his bed with a loud sigh, almost crushing buttons. You really need to know? Izuku asks. Shinso just starts going through the notebooks one by one. Yes, because you were staring at Todoroki pretty intensely and that can mean multiple things, Shinso says. Izuku's face catches fire. He covers his blushing face with his hands and groans, but you don't need to know. You're right, but I already found the notebook, Shinso says, and Izuku hears him flipping through pages. Shinso suddenly stops flipping and Izuku can hear his grin. Izuku sits up and points at him. Don't, I swear to God I will murder, Izuku whisper yells at him. Shinso's grin just gets wider. Yamada/President Mike and Aizawa are coming over tonight, aren't they? Shinso asks. Yes, and you are now uninvited to dinner, Izuku tells him. Your mother wouldn't allow that and you know it, Shinso reasons. I swear to God if you say anything to any of them they won't find your body, Izuku threatens. You're too nice to do that, right? Shinso finally says. Maybe, but don't test me, Izuku tells him threateningly. Shinso just rolls his eyes, his grin shifting to a smirk. You know, since I can't tell Yamada or Aizawa, I could always tell your mom, Shinso says. Izuku lunges for him to stop him, but Shinso stands up and sprints out the door. Izuku runs after him. Hey Inko, did you know dash? Izuku cuts Shinso off by covering his mouth with his hand. Izuku, that isn't very nice, Mom says. Izuku breathes and just shakes his head. Shinso licks his hand, causing Izuku to flinch his hand away. Ooh, did you just lick me? Izuku asks, wiping his hand on Shinso's clothes. Shinso doesn't respond and Izuku looks up and realizes what he just did. Mom had just smiled at the antics after Izuku covered his mouth and had gone back to making dinner. Izuku gently grabs Shinso's wrist and pulls him onto the balcony. When they get out, Izuku immediately starts apologizing profusely. Shinso just takes a couple of deep breaths and shakes his head. It's all right, you didn't realize, Shinso says shakily. I should have though, I'm really sorry, I won't do it again, Izuku apologizes again. It's all right, I need to get used to it anyways to be a hero, let's just work on it slowly and not all at once, Shinso says, the shake finally out of his voice. They both hear the knock at the door and look over. It was great that Aizawa was coming over, but the bandages were concerning. He didn't say anything because he knew it would probably bother him. Mom gets out of the kitchen and opens the door and Yamada and Aizawa walk in. Izuku and Shinso lock eyes and Shinso sprints into the room. Izuku follows him and Shinso opens his mouth to say something and Izuku tackles him to the ground. You are not allowed to word anymore because you are going to reveal too many things, Izuku tells him. Jesus, kid, Aizawa says. He's keeping secrets, Shinso breathes, perfectly okay with being tackled to the ground apparently. And you should keep them too, Izuku breathes, rolling off Shinso to the ground. No, that's boring, then I and them can't tease you about it, Shinso says, sitting up. Izuku sits up as well and sticks his tongue out at him. Shinso copies him. This is like perfect blackmail information on me, but I mean go ahead, Izuku says. I mean you are right, but telling people outright is funnier, Shinso explains. Well, what did you find out? Yamada asks excitedly. Izuku stares Shinso down and glares at him. Shinso looks back at him with a smirk. If you say anything, I'm locking myself in the bathroom and never leaving. It will become my new home, Izuku tells him. Shinso snorts. I figured out his crush, Shinso says simply. Ooh, who is it? Yamada asks. Mom also comes out of the kitchen to listen for a second. Izuku groans and stands up and walks into the bathroom. Goodbye and farewell. Don't visit, Izuku says before closing and locking the bathroom door. Izuku can hear Shinso laughing out in the living room. Come on Izuku, it's not that embarrassing, it's just a little crush, Yamada yells. That's not necessarily true. It was a dwarf sunflower. Adoration. Something almost higher than love. Izuku was totally and utterly screwed. Maybe his quirk was just mistaken. Maybe it was just a simple crush. I mean, when you adore someone, it's kind of like you think they are adorable. Yeah, it's just a crush. Just a silly crush. Nothing to panic about. Why did Izuku always run headfirst into his emotions? Izuku closes his eyes and takes a few deep breaths. If he gets to know Todoroki, he will know for sure. Yeah, that will help things. The only problem is getting him to talk. From what Uraraka and Ida have said, he doesn't talk to anyone. He also kind of got that from watching him train. Izuku was in over his head, wasn't he? A quiet knock on the door draws him out of his thoughts. Are you alright, Zu? Mom asks. Izuku sighs. Yeah, just thinking, Izuku tells her quietly. We won't tease you if it really bugs you that much, Mom tells him. No, it's fine, dial it back a tiny bit, but I'm fine. Just have a lot of thoughts, especially with the sports festival this week, Izuku explains and opens the door. Let me know if it really gets too much, Mom says. I'm really fine. Besides, me going into the bathroom was a joke, and then I started thinking about things, and so it ended up being longer than what I had planned, Izuku explains. If you say so, Mom says. Wednesday had finally arrived. Izuku hadn't really been able to get any sleep last night, but he was still ready to finally prove himself. After he discovered that if he was touching someone's skin on skin, he could tell what they were thinking, he could think of a ton of different applications. There was even a flower that meant truth. He could do a lot of interrogations and actually figure out if the person was lying or not. Also, he could make flowers whenever he wanted to, it just did it without his permission when he was having extreme emotions. So he could create a bunch of different flowers and use them to distract or blind people. Besides, Eraserhead fights Quirkless and makes enemies too. Izuku was also good with on-the-spot analysis, so that could help him as well. Izuku walks towards UA in his PE clothes, ready for the day to start. Hey, Shinso, Izuku says, jogging up to him. Shinso had a messenger bag over his shoulder. Izuku himself had a backpack on full of snacks, water bottles, his comfort blanket if he gets too stressed or has a panic attack, and his phone and a charger. Hey Midoriya, are you ready for today? Ready to impress your crush? Shinso teases. Izuku's face only colors slightly, a soft pink. Shinso had figured out what was okay to tease him about and what was too far. I am ready, and no, that isn't even part of my plan. Are you ready for today? Izuku asks, rolling his eyes. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. We did a ton of training and I know more about my quirk than I ever have, Shinso says. Izuku nods his head. Alright, just to let you know and tell you what to do if it happens. If I happen to have a panic attack, take me to the nurse's office. I have a comfort blanket in my backpack, so if you just get that for me and something to drink that should help keep me from dissociating, and maybe chocolate or something which I also have in my backpack if it gets to that point, Izuku explains him. Alright, good to know. Also, if we run into Bakugo, do you want me to do anything? Shinso asks. Let him speak to me and say what he needs to say unless it gets too bad, and if he gets physical, stop him, Izuku tells him. Alright, I'm sure that Uraraka and Ida will try to stop him as well if he outright attacks you, Shinso says. Izuku nods his head again. They make it to the prep room for their class. Hey, Midoriya, I remember you talking about wanting to get better at makeup, so what if I did your eyeliner for the sports festival? I brought some makeup other than the eyeliner if you wanted to do more. Yamashita asks once Shinso and Izuku walk in. Izuku smiles and nods his head. He had his mom do his makeup once, and it was actually quite relaxing. That would definitely help his nerves, especially about probably meeting up with Kaken. Yamashita beams and gently grabs his wrist. Shinso starts to protest but sees that Izuku is fine. Yamashita leads him to a chair. So, just eyeliner or eyeshadow as well? Yamashita asks. If you do eyeshadow, I would want it more natural. Eyeliner is cool, I just don't really feel like eyeshadow today, but if you want to, you can do, like tan colors, Izuku explains. I'll do some neutral eyeshadow then just to have the eyeliner pop a little more, Yamashita says. Izuku nods his head. Izuku closes his eyes when Yamashita asks. Izuku relaxes as Yamashita starts to apply the primer and eyeshadow to his eyelids. This is a nice way to start the day. Also, it would maybe impress my crush, as Shinso said. Ugh, why did Shinso have to say that? Now that's all he's going to be thinking about. Yamashita finishes with the eyeshadow and pulls the brush away. What color do you want? I have red, blue, or just regular black, Yamashita asks. Just go with black, Izuku says. Yamashita hums. Yamashita gently strokes the eyeliner onto his lids and Izuku lets himself relax and listen to the chatter of his classmates. Yeah, he probably wasn't going to be in the class for much longer, but it was nice. There, Yamashita says after finishing with the eyeliner. Izuku opens his eyes and Shinso shows him a picture of him with his eyes closed and with his eyes open. It looks amazing. Thank you. Izuku says, happily beaming at Yamashita. Of course, I'm glad you like it, Yamashita says. Izuku gets up and he and Shinso go to a corner where no one or their stuff is. Izuku sets his backpack down and so does Shinso. Now you can definitely impress your crush, Shinso teases. Izuku rolls his eyes and shoves his arm. Shinso snorts and plops down onto the ground. What are you going to do about Bakugo? I know you said I could stop him if he tried anything, but are you just going to avoid him or what? Shinso asks. Well, I want to win, so I definitely won't be able to avoid him after I'm in the spotlight, but before that I'm definitely going to hide from him. Which I know seems kind of cowardly and like I'm running, but I just don't want to have to confront him if I don't have to. Like I know how to fight and have been teaching you, but that doesn't mean I'm good at it. I mostly learned through videos and some classes, and if I ever tried to fight back in elementary school and middle school, it made them fight me harder. Use their quirks more. I have a nasty scar from a guy with a batwing quirk. The claw end of it caught my bicep and now I have a thin scar there. I don't know, Izuku rambles. I don't think you're a coward for avoiding your childhood bully, tormentor, assaulter, whatever you want to call him. He also told you to kill yourself, so it's fine if you don't want to see him. At least not yet, Shinso tells him. You know, I'm not even really scared about him hurting me, maybe a little bit, but I'm worried about myself forgiving him, Izuku says quietly, blinking away tears. Shinso immediately understands and gently wraps his arms around him. You can forgive him if you want, it's your choice, but I would wait until he apologizes first. Don't just forgive him when he hasn't even apologized, Shinso says. Izuku nods against his shoulder, taking a shuddering breath. Thanks, Shinso, Izuku tells him and pulls back. Oh, by the way, Midoriya, the eyeliner is waterproof, Yamashita tells Izuku with a wink. Izuku huffs a laugh and nods his head. So, what do you think the first event is going to be? Shinso asks him. I'm pretty sure it's an obstacle race, Izuku says. Why do you think that? Shinso asks, confused. Izuku stares straight into his eyes and deadpans. Did you not see the giant track around the main arena or them making it? Okay, yeah, maybe you're right, Shinso chuckles. Hey guys, time to go on. Hinako, their class representative, tells them, peeking into the prep room. Basically everyone in the room sighed or groaned about going out. Hey, after the first event, I'm pretty sure there are food stands and some cotton candy, Izuku tells everyone, trying to cheer them up. That definitely got a couple people's moods up. Izuku and Shinso stand up and follow everyone out. Izuku fiddles with his hands nervously, so Shinso gently grabs his hand and holds it. Izuku was finally used to the other touching him randomly as long as Shinso showed what he was doing. Izuku squeezes his hand slightly and Shinso squeezes his back reassuringly. And general education classes, C, D, and E. Present Mike announces as they walk out into the arena. The people in the crowds cheer, but obviously not as loud as they did for the hero classes. Support course classes, F, G, and H. Present Mike announces as those classes come out well. And last but not least, business and management classes I, J, and K. Present Mike finishes the announcements. They stop a couple feet from the stage where Midnight is standing. Izuku swings Shinso and is slightly out of nerves. Shinso actually started to do it with him. Both of them trying to ignore the roaring crowd and get out some nervous energy. Now, it's time for the athlete's oath, Midnight calls. A bunch of people and students start murmuring about how the R-rated hero was hosting the first year's festival. Pipe down. Your student representative is. Midnight trails off and creates a dramatic pause. From Class 1A, Katsuki Bakugo. Midnight announces. Izuku involuntarily tenses up. Shinso squeezes his hand reassuringly. Kaken walks up onto the stage and walks up to the microphone. The athlete's oath, make no mistake about it. I'm gonna take first place. Kaken announces. All of the students cry in outrage. Kaken just casually walks off the stage. Top 42. Izuku tells Shinso quietly. What? Shinso asks just as quietly. You have to make it in the top 42 at the end of the obstacle course, Izuku explains. Are you going for first? Shinso asks. Izuku smiles, a mischievous glint filling his eyes. What else would I go for? Izuku asks. Shinso smirks right back. See you at first place then, Shinso tells him. Midnight announces the first event as an obstacle course, causing Izuku to smirk. This wasn't going to be easy, but he already planned for it to be like this. He also already kinda knew what most of Class 1 as first moves would be, along with Shinso since he shared his analysis of them with him. If he was right, Todoroki would try to take out the competition by icing the floor and everyone's feet. Todoroki was too predictable, or maybe Izuku just thought everyone was predictable. Everyone lined up and he looked at the entrance. It was a thin, narrow passage. They were trying to choke the crowd. The beginning was an obstacle. The alarm sounds and Izuku sprints forwards. He bumps into a couple people but decides to ignore it. He feels the slight chill that falls into the air, then jumps. The crackle of ice forming happens right after he jumps. Izuku lands and slips a little but manages to not fall. Izuku regains his balance and goes as fast as he can across the ice. Izuku makes it out of the passageway and jogs towards the open area. He sees ahead that Todoroki freezes the entirety of the robots. Izuku almost stops in awe, wanting to analyze even that move. He's been wanting to analyze everything about Todoroki for a while though. Izuku catches up to the others at the edge as the robots fall to the ground. He jogs towards the edges of the clearing and after a second's thought picks up a piece of the robot. Izuku continues on his way and pushes towards the next thing. A web of wires flow across a canyon with posts in a bunch of random spots. Izuku looks through the ropes and platforms and quickly finds the quickest route to follow. He ties the piece of metal across his back and starts to carefully pull himself across the canyon on the ropes. After crossing the canyon, he makes it to a plain area of dirt and sees Todoroki and Kaken towards the front. How upset would Kaken get if he beat him? Izuku smirks, he would be said. So that's exactly what he was going to do. Izuku remembered what Present Mike had said about the mines and that they weren't that dangerous or explosive on their own. Izuku uses the piece of metal to start digging up mines and placing them in a pile. This better work and he better not die. Oh, well, you only live once. Izuku positions the metal on his chest, crosses his fingers, figures out the correct trajectory and jumps. The mines go off and Izuku blasts off and flies across the field. Izuku lands and rolls in front of Kaken and Todoroki. Izuku stands and sprints. He turns his head to Kaken and smiles at him and winks. "Du." Kaken yells and Izuku hears his signature explosions and runs faster. He makes it past the finish line in first place. Izuku leans over onto his knees and breathes. Kaken passes through as well as Todoroki. Deku, what the hell do you think you're doing? Kaken yells at him. Izuku manages to control his flinch. Izuku watches as people file into the arena again. What do you think? Izuku asks him, beaming. You know what? Kaken starts and reaches to grab his shirt. Shinso comes over to Izuku at that time and stands between them staring at Izuku. Hey, good job on getting first, Shinso told him. Told you I would do it, Izuku tells him. Hey purple bastard. I was talking to him. Kaken yells. Both Shinso and Izuku ignore him. Izuku's eyes shift over to Todoroki. Todoroki is glaring at him and Izuku quickly moves his gaze back to Shinso. Good job, he said everyone off, but he was proud of himself. What he thought about himself was all that mattered. Kaken seems ready to attack again, but Midnight calls the top 42 students over to the stage and tells everyone to go up to the stands. The next event is, Midnight pauses for extra dramatism, a cavalry battle. How the point system will work is the last person to come in sits at 5 points and goes up 5 for every one person, making the person in first place worth, another dramatic pause, 10 million points. Well, this was a predicament. Izuku was screwed. Midnight goes on to explain how the cavalry battle will go with people in teams of 3 to 4. Hey, I'll be on your team. Don't panic, Shinso tells Izuku. Izuku takes a deep breath and lets it out, nodding his head. Midnight tells everyone that they have 15 minutes to find their teams and make a plan. Hey, Midoriya, can I be on your team? Uraraka asks. Yeah, of course, Izuku tells her, starting to come up with a plan. They would need one more member to add to their team. Hopefully someone who can move fast. Ida would be good, but it looks like he is going on to Todoroki's team. Hey, I'm Hatsune, nice to meet you. I would like to be on your team, you can use my babies. A girl with pink hair comes up to Izuku and sticks her hand in his face. Izuku flinches back slightly. Shinso glares at her and she backs up a little. Okay, you can join the team, what B's do you have? Izuku asks hesitantly. Hatsune goes on to explain all of the gadgets that she has on her. Izuku nods along. It would probably be best to use the shoe boosters and jetpack to evade the other teams because Uraraka could use her quirk to make everyone weightless. It would be kind of like skating along the ground. We could also use Shinso's quirk to get other headbands from the other teams. So even if we lose the 10 million band, we will have points to still move on. It could even confuse the other teams if we flip the bands around so they grab a random one and not know what band they are grabbing, Izuku explains. That sounds great, Midoriya, Uraraka tells him. Hatsune nods and agrees with him. That sounds good to me, Shinso says, nodding. Midnight calls that it's time to get into formation and ready to go. Okay, everyone remember that everyone will be gunning after just us. Dodging is our best bet unless Shinso can get them to respond to him, then we can get them to give us their headbands, Izuku tells everyone after getting in formation. Right? Uraraka says, nodding her head. Shinso also nods his head. Gotcha, Hatsune says excitedly. 3. Midnight calls. 2. 1. 4 teams immediately charge towards Izuku's team. Brace. Izuku calls. Uraraka and Hatsune turn their heads away as Izuku turns the jetpack on. Uraraka and Hatsune also turn the shoe boosters on to maneuver. When they drop down, they start running. If worse comes to worse, I think I can try and make some ivy. It's hard for me to do a specific plant, but I can do it. We can also use some flowers as a distraction. When they dust away, that would probably make it worse, Izuku explains to them as they dodge people. Shinso gets someone to respond to him and they hand over the band and go to block people or slow them down. Shinso hands the band up to Izuku and he ties it around his neck with his original one, both with the numbers flipped towards his neck. "Du!" Kaken yells, blasting away from his team. Suddenly Izuku makes ivy down his arms, grabs it, then wraps it around Kaken's arm and tugs. Kaken almost slams into the ground if not for Siro catching him right before and pulling him back. Izuku lets go of the ivy and his team moves in the opposite direction of Kaken's team. That was so cool, Midoriya. Uraraka praises him. He blushes lightly but pays more attention to the teams around them. Kaken will definitely be back. He hates my guts, so Izuku warns them. He's also in but, so Shinso adds, breathing. Izuku snorts. They get another team to hand over their headband and continue moving. Present Mike just said that we have about 8 minutes left. We just have to hold on to these bands and it shouldn't be that hard to keep evading. So, we should be good, Izuku tells his team. They all nod in agreement. Todoroki's team suddenly slides in front of them. Okay, maybe they were screwed. Shinso snorts and Izuku realizes he said that out loud but didn't have time to feel embarrassed at the moment. Multiple teams are gunning for us right now. Izuku tells his team so the ones who can't see well know. Izuku makes out Todoroki telling Yaoyorozu to make an insulator. Kaminari. Alright, I might pass out after this but I think we have about 5 minutes less, so yeah. Izuku tells his team. What are you going to do? Shinso asks. Izuku just lets an ivy down slowly until it makes it to the ground. He figured out he could do this after experimenting a little bit with his quirk. After he found out he could tell other people's emotions while touching them, he wanted to see what else he could do. Like making what plant he wanted to if he thought about it. He could also keep the plant and make it like a normal plant, but it really drained his energy. Izuku watches as Yaoyorozu gets ready to pull out the insulator and Kaminari ready to use his quirk when he pushes the ivy up. Kaminari's quirk goes off, but instead of hitting Izuku's team it hits the ivy. Izuku lets it drop and feels all of his energy leave his body. Izuku droops slightly. Todoroki freezes the teams behind him but Izuku's team manages to jump and evade the ice. Todoroki grabs some of the frozen team's headbands. Todoroki also freezes an arena around him and Izuku's team, trapping them in and the other teams out. WhatIf dash. Todoroki, Ida says seriously. I'm going to do something but then I'll be out of commission for a little bit. Be sure to grab the headband, Ida explains vaguely. Ida starts up his engines and bursts straight at them at an impossible speed. Izuku's eyes widen but he doesn't even have time to process what happens before Todoroki grabs a headband from around Izuku's neck. Sheet, Shinso curses. Holy sheet, Izuku says quietly at Ida's intense speed. Yeah, Shinso also agrees. Izuku turns to look at the board. They would be in 4th place. Todoroki got the 10 million headband. He didn't need to be in 1st place. Are you guys okay with settling with 4th place? Izuku asks them. Yeah, as long as we move on I don't care, Shinso says. I want to try and get our headband back from Todoroki, Uraraka says, determined. Then let's try and take the headband back from Todoroki, Izuku says, smirking. You crazy BS status, Shinso tells them while Hatsum laughs in glee. Alright, let's do it then, Shinso says while getting ready to run. Go for his left side, so the red side if y'all can't tell from here. I can't really from how tired I'm right now but it's fine. He doesn't use his fire so he's leaving his left side completely open, Izuku tells them quietly. Got it, Shinso says, since he's at the front leading them. A minute left. Present Mike calls. Izuku's team charges Todoroki's. Todoroki's eyes widen, obviously not expecting them to charge. 40 seconds. Present Mike announces. Izuku smirks, pulling his arm back and punches hard. 20 seconds. Present Mike continues his countdown. Todoroki moves his arm up to block and lights it on fire. Izuku moves his arm out of the way just in time, still grazing Todoroki's jaw. Todoroki looks down to his own arm in shock and Izuku grabs the middle band from around Todoroki's neck. Time. Present Mike yells. Izuku looks down at his hand. The 10 million band. Izuku laughs. His team sets him down and Izuku leans against Shinso exhausted. You crazy BSTRD, you did it, Shinso says. We did it. Uraraka cheers after catching her breath. You also just punched Todoroki, Hatsum points out. I just punched Todoroki and I'm effing exhausted, Izuku says leaning more heavily onto Shinso. In 1st place, Team Midoriya, DMN. That team only has 1 hero student on it, Present Mike announces. Shinso smirks at that. We just upstaged all of the heroes, Shinso tells him quietly. Izuku huffs a laugh. In 2nd place is Team Todoroki, 3rd is Team Bakugo, and finally in 4th is Team Tetsutetsu. Present Mike finishes his announcement. I'm just gonna take a nap on the ground right now, right here, Izuku says, going to sit down. Shinso stops him and holds him up. We have a 30-minute break, eat something then I can take you to a prep room so you can take a nap, Shinso tells him. Just bring me to the prep room, I'll eat something I have in my backpack, Izuku tells him. No, I'll bring you some actual food, Shinso tells him. Izuku hums. Shinso starts to walk them off of the field with everyone else. Midoriya, a cool voice calls. Todoroki, Izuku's sleep-addled brain supplies for him. Izuku asks, turning his head to look at him. Todoroki nods his head for him to follow him. Izuku takes in a deep breath and forces himself to push off of Shinso and follow him. Meet you in the prep room, Izuku tells Shinso. Todoroki takes him to an empty hallway, away from the flow of students. What do you want to talk about? Izuku asks, slumping against the wall. When you attacked me, you surprised me and made me break my own pledge, Todoroki says. Izuku blinks a couple of times. Pledge? Izuku asks, confused. Was he just super tired? Todoroki ignores his question and keeps going with what he was saying before. Aizawa-sensei seems to enjoy you and you don't even call him sensei. You also have that same tired look about you. Are you Aizawa-sensei's secret love child or something? Todoroki asks. Izuku completely stops. He blinks a couple of times. Secret? Love child? No, Izuku says. Todoroki rolls his eyes. That didn't seem like a very convincing. I feel like there is at least something going on there. You know my father is Endeavor, the second greatest hero of all time. So if you're also connected to a powerful hero, then all the more reason for me to crush you, Todoroki says. Izuku's sleep-filled brain finds that hilarious. He would love for Todoroki to crush him. He is quite muscular. Izuku snorts and has to suppress a giggle when Todoroki glares at him. My dad, he's a powerful BSTRD who only thinks of becoming stronger. Yeah, he's gone all out to make a name for himself as a hero, but he's always seen that living legend All Might as a roadblock and an eyesore. My father could never beat All Might on his own. So he came up with another plan, Todoroki tells him. Why are you telling me this? Izuku asks. He was way too tired to be being told someone's tragic backstory. Quirk marriages. You've heard of them, yeah? Todoroki asks. That wakes Izuku up and he stands up straighter. They started becoming a problem during the second and third generation after quirks appeared. Strong individuals would choose a partner and force them into a marriage for the sole purpose of passing on a strengthened version of their own quirk. Those earlier generations were lacking in ethics. With his wealth and fame, my father made my mother's family agree to the marriage. All to get his hands on her quirk, Todoroki explains. Izuku gulps. This was terrible. Raising me as a hero who could exceed All Might just to fulfill his own ambitions. I hate it. Being no more than a tool for that human garbage. As I remember it, Mom was always crying, I can't stand to see that left side of yours, she said, before throwing scalding water in my face. Todoroki says, raising a hand to cover his scar. He lowers his hand again. In short, not using my left side against you was my revenge on him. Never using my rotten father's quirk? No, rising to the top without using it, I'll have denied him everything, Todoroki says. I'm glad you are going to beat me, but your reasoning for not using your quirk is so dumb. I mean, yeah, you hate your father's guts, but you not using his quirk is just letting him control more of your life. I guess I'm glad that you thought you could tell me that. I won't tell anyone else if you don't want me to, but I'm going to eat and take a nap before the final event starts, Izuku tells him and starts walking back inside towards the prep room. Also Todoroki, I'm going to beat you, Izuku tells him. Izuku makes it to the prep room and sees Ida, Uraraka and Shinso all sitting in there eating. Izuku flops down onto the couch and Shino's hands him his food. When did you learn how to do that? I thought your quirk was just flowers, Shinso asks Izuku. Izuku pauses in his shoving food into his mouth. Izuku swallows and answers, after I realized I could figure out other people's emotions if I was touching them with skin-on-skin contact. Izuku continues to eat and finishes his bowl and puts it on the table. Wake me up when the event starts, Izuku tells his friend, then closes his eyes. Izuku is out in a couple of seconds. Hey, Izuku, wake up, Shinso tells him, nudging him slightly. Izuku sits up and rubs his eyes. Is the final event happening? Izuku asks. Yeah, I sent Ida and Uraraka ahead to give you a little bit more time to sleep, Shinso tells him. Thank you, Izuku tells him. They walk out onto the arena to figure out what the final event was going to be. Izuku was pretty sure it was going to be a tournament. It was every year before, so it was probably going to be the same this year. They stop out onto the field and look to Midnight on the stage. But before the final event, I've got good news for those out of the running. Present Mike announces. This still is a sports festival, so we've got recreational activities for all participants. We even shipped cheerleaders in from America to get you pumped up. Present Mike tells everyone. Hope everyone enjoys this little recreational competition. Once that's over, we're on to the final event. Between the 16 members of the 4 winning teams, we'll have a formal tournament. A series of one-on-one battles. Present Mike announces. The matches will be decided by drawing lots. Once that's settled, we'll move on to the festivities, then the tournament itself, Midnight tells them. I expect some of you would rather take a breather and save your strength. It's up to you 16 finalists whether you participate in the fun, Midnight explains. Sick, another nap. Just what he needed. God, he was turning into Aizawa. Izuku looks up at the board to see who he was fighting against after the lots were drawn. He was up against Shinso and he had to fight first. Izuku groans, he was still so tired. Hopefully he had some more prep time. If he made it past that round with Shinso, he would be up against Todoroki, wonderful. He would have to fight against number 1 daddy issues. I mean, Todoroki had a good reason to despise his father. I mean, Izuku already didn't like Endeavor, but now he definitely didn't like him. He could maybe even say he hated him. Some people went to talk to who they were competing against and others started to leave. Shinso and Izuku walked together out of the arena to go get their stuff and move it to the stands. I'm literally so tired, Izuku. Shinso chuckles, maybe you shouldn't have overdone it so much. But we won, Izuku tells Shinso. That we did, Shinso sighs. Also because we are going against each other. Let's do our best and give the audience a real show, Izuku tells Shinso. Shinso does a grin similar to Aizawa's and agrees with him. They grab their stuff and put their bags on the seats toward the left front, then head back to the prep room. Izuku lays down on the couch and tells Shinso to wake him up when it was time for their fight. Shinso tells him he will, and Izuku closes his eyes. He couldn't wait to show how far he'd come and that the quirk didn't matter with a hero. It was the hero's spirit, determination, and drive. Izuku falls asleep to get his energy back for the matches to come. We have 10 minutes, Midoriya, Shinso says, nudging Izuku awake. Izuku groans but sits up. Why couldn't they have given us more time? Izuku asks. Shinso laughs at that. You just exhausted your quirk, Shinso tells him, shaking his head. Izuku sighs and picks up the wrapping tape that he left in the prep room. He starts to wrap his right wrist and hand. Smart, Shinso tells him. Izuku hums and moves onto his left hand and wrist. It will make making plans harder but easier to punch things and cause less injuries to me, Izuku tells him. Right? You do know we aren't technically supposed to be in the same prep room, Shinso says. Izuku rolls his eyes. Yeah, I know, but I would rather be with you even though we are going against each other, Izuku tells him. Yeah, I know, Shinso says. Izuku smiles at him. You are too kind, Midoriya, Shinso tells him. That reminds me, call me Izuku, Izuku tells him. Shinso blinks a couple of times. Really? Shinso asks, shocked. Izuku finishes wrapping his hands and nods. Yeah, I mean you were my first real friend. I also trust you, and I mean you've slept over at my house. I basically told you who my crush was. I also told you something that I never told anyone else, and I really trust you. I don't trust people easily. Well, I guess I do, but I also don't, you know? But I want you to call me Izuku, so yeah, Izuku rambles. Shinso smiles and his eyes water. Well, Izuku, call me Hitoshi. Shin's Hitoshi says. How about Toshi, are you alright with that? Izuku asks. Toshi smiles at that. Yeah, that's okay, he says quietly. 5 minutes left, opponents should head to their respective tunnels. Aizawa's voice comes over the comm. Izuku nods his head and stands up. Toshi gets up as well and they both leave the room. They make it to their respective tunnels and walk out onto the arena. The first match. Present Mike calls. The kid who's won both rounds but is still making a weird face. It's Izuku Midoriya, from General Studies. Present Mike announces. Versus. Someone who won the second round along with Midoriya, it's Hitoshi Shinso, also from General Studies. Mike announces. The rules are simple. Win by knocking your opponent out of the ring, immobilizing them or getting them to, I give up. Bring the pain. We've got our good old recovery girl on standby. And fight dirty if you must. Ethics have no meaning here. Well, of course, going for the kill is a no-no. You'll be disqualified. Because a true hero's fists fly only in pursuit of villains. Present Mike explains. Hear that, Izuku. Ready to bring the pain. No killing though, Toshi says sarcastically. Izuku snorts and nods his head. Ready to put on a show, Izuku tells him. Yeah, but I'm going to win, Toshi says. Izuku rolls his eyes and smirks. Now let's get this thing started. Mike announces, ready. Mike continues. Start. Mike yells. Toshi and Izuku both move forward. Izuku swings his fist and hits Toshi in the jaw. Toshi moves his arm and grips Izuku's and pulls. Izuku stumbles back and almost falls on his butt. Izuku shifts to regain balance and punches Toshi on the nose. Toshi stumbles back as blood drips from his nose. Izuku moves to take him down. Cool fighting things happen. Izuku lets Toshi push himself towards the edge of the ring as they both duke it out in hand to hand. Once Izuku and Toshi get close to the edge, Izuku shifts slightly. Sorry, Izuku half mumbles, half thinks. Izuku lifts his leg and knees Toshi in the crotch. Toshi folds over and tears fall down his face. Izuku grabs his arm and flips him over and slams him into the ground out of bounds. Izuku Midoriya moves on to the second round. Present Mike announces. Izuku helps Toshi up and they both walk to the middle of the arena again. Toshi wipes the blood off of his face and some of the tears streaming down his cheeks. Izuku rotates his wrist. It had a dull ache to it. The crowd claps for them but aren't cheering as loud as they were at the beginning of the festival. Goodness gracious. We're off to an uneventful start. Well, put your hands together for our fierce competitors. Present Mike announces. Izuku and Toshi bow to each other then leave out of the same tunnel. Sorry you couldn't show off your quirk and for kicking you in the D-dash. Izuku tells Toshi quietly once they get into the tunnel. Toshi actually bends over and wheezes once the crowd won't see. You have a strong FING kick, Toshi wheezes. Izuku winces. I'm sorry I didn't mean to kick you that hard, Izuku tells him quickly. He also shifts Toshi's arm over his shoulder to help him walk. Toshi leans on him and limps as they walk to Recovery Girl. To be fair, I'm pretty sure you sprained my wrist, Izuku tells him jokingly. Toshi just sighs and rolls his eyes. Yeah, a sprained wrist is so much worse than a knee to the ball, Toshi snarks. Izuku snorts and pushes against him lightly, a soft smile on his face. Izuku helps Toshi the rest of the way to Recovery Girl's temporary office. She looks up at the both of them when they open the door. She stares at Izuku long and hard. Why do I have the feeling you're going to end up here a lot? She asks. Probably because he will. He is a self-sacrificing idiot and has no self-preservation, Toshi tells her, pushing off of Izuku. She just sighs and leads the both of them over to one of the beds in the office. Sometimes I feel like this school pushes you kids too hard, Recovery Girl tells them. More like Izuku pushes himself too far all the time, Toshi jokes. Izuku rolls his eyes but doesn't say anything. Recovery sighs at that then kisses Toshi's forehead then Izuku's. Thank you, Izuku tells her. She nods her head and hands him some gummies. She also hands Toshi some gummies. Yeah, thank you, Toshi mumbles. Izuku and Toshi get up and leave the office. Izuku throws the gummies into his mouth and eats them. He sees Toshi eat them as well. You did really well though, Izuku, Toshi compliments Izuku. Izuku chokes on his own spit and looks over at him. Izuku swallows the gummies and smiles at Toshi. Thanks, you did great too. And don't worry, I'm sure Aizawa will advocate for us to be moved to the hero course, Izuku tells him. Toshi just hums. Izuku flexes his hands slightly. His wrist felt way better and so did his head and the rest of his injuries. Recovery Girl's Quirk really was so cool. Izuku and Toshi make it to where their class was watching the festival. Izuku moves his backpack and sits down. He pulls out his comfort blanket and wraps it around his shoulders. He then pulls out his analyze notebook. He could now add even more to Class 1 as analysis. Toshi sits down next to him and yawns. Do you think I could just sleep for the rest of the time? Toshi asks. Izuku smirks slightly. Yeah, probably, but don't you want to see me kick some butt? Izuku asks. Toshi sighs. You are correct. You better beat Todoroki, Mr. Pretty Boy, so I can see you destroy Bakugo bitch, Toshi tells him. Izuku flusters slightly at the pretty boy comment. Toshi probably only said it since Todoroki is his crush. I already beat Bakugo bitch twice, but it would be funny to win the festival instead of him. Especially because of what he said at the beginning, Izuku tells him. Toshi snorts and nods his head. Really funny, Toshi agrees. Pretty sure you gave pretty boy a slide though. When he saw you with the eyeliner it looked like he was going to spontaneously combust, Toshi tells Izuku. Izuku just rolls his eyes. Sure. No, I'm serious. When you looked at him he looked all serious and ready to murder you, but then when you looked away I looked over at him and he looked pretty flustered. I mean, he didn't outwardly blush but his face actually had expression on it, Toshi explains. Izuku just rolls his eyes again. Present Mic announces the start of the next match with Shiro and Todoroki. Who do you think is going to win? Toshi asks Izuku. Todoroki. Izuku answers immediately. Toshi gives him a weird look. Izuku sighs. It's not that Shiro isn't a good fighter, it's just that Todoroki is a total powerhouse. Shiro is also better suited for city areas with tall buildings where he can swing around on. He also needs to get better at hand-to-hand. Most of the class do, they rely too much on their quirks, Izuku explains. Toshi hums. Izuku leans back in his chair as Todoroki sets out a huge glacier after being dragged by Shiro. I now see what you meant by absolute powerhouse, Toshi tells him quietly. Yeah, Izuku breaths. You want to go get something from the food stands while we wait for them to get rid of the ice? Izuku asks. Sure, Toshi says breathlessly, nodding his head. Izuku walked down to the prep rooms to find Uraraka. She did so well in the fight with Kabakubic and Izuku wanted to congratulate her and make sure she was okay. She seemed upset before she passed out. He didn't know how he knew she was upset, he just did. Izuku makes it to the prep room and knocks quietly on the door. He pushes it open and sees Uraraka sitting at one of the tables looking at her hands. Hey, Izuku says quietly. She looks up at him and gives him a wobbly smile. Hey, Uraraka says. Izuku smiles. I just wanted to say you did really good. Good job at keeping Bakubic on his toes. I know you probably are upset about losing, which is totally fair, but I just wanted to say you did really good. I have some things that could help you improve, but I've put them in the analysis that I will give you when I join your class. You did great and you have so much to improve on and I know you're going to become a great hero. I also wanted to leave you with my blanket. I know when I'm feeling down it really helps me. I also brought you one of the foods that really help me, so I just wanted to, help you feel dash. Izuku stops his ramble abruptly when Uraraka hugs him, sniffling. Thank you, Midoriya, Uraraka sniffs, hugging him tighter. Izuku forces himself to relax, despite the crawling feeling on his skin where Uraraka was touching him. Izuku hugs her back lightly, trying not to smash the small cake he brought Uraraka. Uraraka moves back and wipes her eyes. Sorry, I know you don't love it when people touch you, she says apologetically. It's alright. You're upset, I understand, Izuku tells her quietly. Anyway, here, Izuku tells her and hands her the small cake along with his comfort blanket. She takes it and smiles through the tears rolling down her face. Really, thank you, Midoriya. You're such a great friend, Uraraka tells him. Izuku smiles, oak-leaf geraniums blooming in his hair. You're welcome, I have to go now, Izuku tells her. She nods her head and thanks him one more time as he leaves. Izuku starts to head off to where he has to wait for the round to start. Izuku jumps when Endeavor rounds the corner. "Hey!" Endeavor says harshly. Izuku swallows down his fear and nods his head lightly. "There you are," Endeavor says coldly still. The sweltering heat that was surrounding Endeavor was almost suffocating. Izuku swallows and manages to stutter out, "Endeavor, what are you doing back here? Endeavor glares at him. "You have good hand-to-hand combat, but your quirk isn't even close to something impressive. You will be an easy stepping stone for my Shoto," Endeavor says coldly, ignoring what Izuku had said. Izuku swallows and ignores Endeavor and pushes past him. He was just a big bully. Just like Kasuki. It felt nice to not listen to bullies. "Just for the record, I don't care what you think, Endeavor. I'm going to give it my all and try to beat Todoroki. I'm not just a stepping stone in someone else's story. Another thing, Todoroki isn't your property, he isn't yours, he's his own person, he isn't you. Make sure you get that through your thick skull, hope it isn't too hard," Izuku tells him as he walks away. Izuku feels the heat in the hallway get exponentially hotter. "Listen here, brat." Endeavor spits and Izuku can hear him start stalking towards him. "I can't talk with you for any longer, I have a fight I need to get to," Izuku tells him, heart going a mile a minute. Izuku swallows again as he feels the heat get hotter. At this point he was going to get heat slide or a burn and would be able to charge Endeavor with assault. Endeavor stops walking and lets Izuku walk to the tunnel. Good thing he was going against Todoroki. His ice would at least cool him down. Izuku walks into the arena along with Todoroki. God, why did his shirt have to fit him so well? If he didn't pass out from heat, he definitely would because of how hot Todoroki was. He was such a disaster. Or maybe crazy. Maybe both. Probably both. "You ready?" Todoroki asks. "Ready to die?" Izuku just didn't respond to Todoroki and shifted into a ready stance. Present mic announces the start and Izuku dives out of the way of Todoroki's ice, already knowing he was going to do a big move to try and stop the fight fast. Izuku rolls to his feet and runs towards Todoroki. If he got in close, Todoroki wouldn't be able to do those big moves. They needed to build up in the ground first. Izuku swings his fist and it hits its mark on Todoroki's jaw. Todoroki, shocked and not expecting that, stumbles back. He then grabs Izuku's arm and tries to freeze it. Izuku just creates flowers and lets them get frozen and not his arm. Izuku dances back and shifts behind the glacier and takes deep breaths. Todoroki sends another wave of where he thinks Izuku is and he just dodges to the side. He shakes the frost off of his arms. He sneaks around the glacier and starts to move towards Todoroki. He takes the tape off of his non-DMNT arm and makes a vine. He pulls it off his arm and moves it to his DMNT arm. Izuku comes up on Todoroki's left side and wraps the vine around his wrist and pulls hard. Todoroki stumbles towards him and Izuku kicks him in the stomach. Izuku feels something crack under his leg when he kicks. Todoroki lets out a frosty breath. "You're shivering, Todoroki. You can't fight with hypothermia. It could cause real damage to you," Izuku tells him after the kick. "Shut up," Todoroki snaps, trying to punch Izuku. Izuku moves his head but the punch still clips his cheek. "You are so childish to reject that. You get upset that people aren't giving it their all, you hypocrite. You are only using half of your quirk over something that isn't even true," Izuku snaps at Todoroki. Punching Todoroki back. He manages to dodge. "Shut up," Todoroki grounds out again, sending a kick of his own. Izuku moves back again. "You aren't him. You are your own person. You're only hurting yourself by rejecting a part of yourself. It's not his quirk. It's yours. It's always been yours and will always be." Izuku yells at him. Todoroki freezes but not because of his quirk. Todoroki bursts into flame tears in his eyes. Izuku beams at him. Todoroki looks at him, a smile on his face. "What are you smiling for? I thought you wanted to win." Todoroki asks, over the roar of flames. "I did, but I would rather help and save you," Izuku yells back at him. "You're crazy," Todoroki tells him. "I've heard that a lot today," Izuku says with a smile. Izuku lifts his arm to punch Todoroki and he does the same. Izuku faintly hears Midnight and Cementos yelling about them getting hurt. Izuku just smiles and punches with all he has. He made sure to wrap the vines around his hand to at least soften the blow slightly. The arena explodes in steam from the heat coming from Todoroki. Izuku gets sent flying back after punching the cement block. Izuku hits the wall, conscience waning. Izuku looks up and sees Todoroki. The edges of his vision turning black. Izuku smiles at him. Also, Daemon Todoroki has abs too. That's the last thought Izuku has before passing out.